Yes, sir. I love that intro. It kind of builds up some energy, but I promise you today it will not be anticlimactic. How's my audio? Should be pretty good. I got my AC unit on, my noise canceling. I don't know if y'all can hear it or not. I'd like to know how good you hear me because somebody told me that you can't even hear my AC, and that's pretty good. That's pretty damn good. I love this microphone. I did botch a couple videos because I was too close to it. All right. Satan's little season theory. Man, I've been quiet too long. I've been quiet way too long. That little theory is making headway. And it's not because it's correct. It's not because it even has any valid evidence to support it. It's because it's something new. It's been introduced into the field, but it is a soul-killing theory. People think that, you know, uh, this is an endorsement to Christianity. It is not. It is an attack against Christianity. It's literally telling Christians, hey man, you know what? Jesus already came. You missed the bus. So man, we're gonna get into it. I've been taking notes, over the past year or so since this little theory came out, but I never took them seriously. I got them all together. I had notes scattered everywhere, just little things that, I'm a note taker. So I put it all. I talked to one of my moderators. She's been on top of this for a long time. She's been watching all the videos, and she actually asked me to remain anonymous, and she was very curious about it, wanted my take on it. But it was already on my radar simply because Jason Tice, aka Jaydreamerz, promotes it. And I mean, he may argue that he's trying to be level-headed and he's not really promoting it, but you don't do 3 videos on your channel and then claim you're not promoting it. You don't have the main guy who came out with the theory and popularized the theory and exploded on social media coming out with this theory on your channel, and you're not really promoting it. So I'm not trying to hear that, but you already know Archaix isn't trying to hear anything, all things Jaydreamerz. We're not trying to hear none of that stuff. We've already been down that road. So it is soul killing. Soul killing. I wouldn't even be surprised if there wasn't some type of intelligence agency apparatus behind this whole thing because of what it does. And I mean, the people involved in pushing it. It's just crazy. But we're going to get into it, guys. Like I said, I drank a beer about 2 hours ago, took a picture of it and showed it up because that's what I do. I celebrate my takedowns before I even execute them. That's what this is. That coffee is so real. Houston meetup. We're gonna have a blast. We have our beloved and cherished perceiver, Joel Schaefer. He's like a Toltec shaman. He will be with us in Houston, and he may not be the only one. Furthermore, Flat Earth Dave is coming on the channel soon. I got some podcasts lined up with different people, and the podcast link is somewhere in the description box too for those who are trying to come onto the channel and get their game on. I talked to David this morning. Flat Earth Day. He's a good guy, very passionate, knows his shit. We'll be talking about the toroidal nature of the simulation and how the foundation is absolutely planar. Yeah, it's the Perceiver YouTube channel. He's coming to Houston. He'll be in. Well, actually, he's going to be on the channel in the next in 3 days from now. 3 days from now, Perceiver will be here on Archaix. We're going to chop it up. We always have great energy, man. We just bounce a lot of ideas off each other. Like I said, the most watched video in all Archaix history, like 200,000 views. I haven't looked in a long time, but maybe more than that. But it was about 200,000 last time I looked at it. Is Toltec to high tech? Who really are the elite? And that was Joel. That was Joel and I. Just no notes, no nothing. Just 2 guys chopping it up about the way the world is. So some of you are asking, some of you are like, damn man, I watch all your videos, Jason. Archaix is awesome, but I don't even know what the hell Satan's little season theory is. So let me educate you. Let me educate you on that right now. I'm gonna have to change these screens out. Hold on just a second. Satan's little theory. Satan's little theory. Satan's little season theory. It's pretty interesting, guys. It is pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting how they could just pull the wool over people's eyes, and it surprises me. After by the end of this video, it's going to surprise you too. But it just shocks me that so many people who claim to know the Bible would even fall for this farce. Satan's little season theory. It's offensive from a biblical perspective. You guys know I know my Bible. I'm going to show you today. Because, yeah, you have to cherry pick. In order to promote this theory, you have to cherry pick select portions, texts, and prophecies and ignore 99% of the rest of the Bible in order to push this theory. So, yeah, I'm not going to, man, who's blowing up my phone? Yeah, man, stop that. I'm still in the intro of this damn video. So Satan's little season theory. What is this video really about? What are we going to dissect here? Well, before I can dismantle a false paradigm, you have to know what it is that's being promoted. So according to the Satan's little season theory, Jesus was crucified in 33 AD, and the return of Christ himself happened in AD 70 when Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans, stone by stone, just like Jesus predicted. When Jesus returned, Satan was bound for 1,000 years, and it began the millennial reign of Christ and the saints who would rule for 1,000 years. The camp of the saints would endure. It'd be a time of peace, a golden age. And then, according to Revelation chapter 20, one of these cherry-picked verses taken out of context, but according to Revelation chapter 20, Satan would be loosed for a little season after the 1,000 years. And that little season is a period that we're living in right now. So they theorized that Satan's little season began with 1776, the start of the United States. Two major red flags. One, well, actually, it's three major red flags that we've already started with. Before I do another, before I break off this intro and we start in the video after I do an errant ad. But guys, there's three red flags here. One of them is that Jaydreamerz is on top of this, and that right there is a no-no for me, and I'm going to explain here in a little while. The second thing is this is a trap for Christians. This is an attempt to sell hopium while also stealing the soul. Yeah, man, Christ already came back. Bro, you missed the bus. That's a hell of a mind. Beep. What do you do with that? How do you unpack that? Because I used to be a Christian and I know how devastating that realization would be to me if I missed the bus. Yeah, man, that's crazy. The third red flag is that this theory, we understand that all institutions degrade, especially after they're hijacked by outsiders. But if you haven't read the congressional globes, the congressional annals, the congressional records, if you haven't read the actual letters of Thomas Paine, Benjamin Franklin, you haven't read what Thomas and Jefferson said in his private communications to many people, these letters have all been published. There's whole books that show them. If you haven't read the writings of the founding fathers, you would not believe how spiritual these men were and how they warned us that a certain culture of people would end up trying to take over the United States of America. Well, they were prophetic because the people they warned us about did it. That's my third red flag. This theory requires you to associate the beginning of the United States of America, the consolidation of a commonwealth of 13 colonies that came together and decided to be their own country. It doesn't matter if Freemasons were involved. It doesn't matter if Rosicrucians were behind the scenes doing things. It doesn't matter what subversive secret societies were doing anything. The core element of the people themselves rose up against taxation. They rose up against the colonial dictates that were being implemented by a governing body overseas run by a monarchy. They got fed up with it. all the beginning writings of the United States were very, very spiritual, very, very Christian. These people had their children's and their children's children's and their children's 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 interest in mind when they wrote the Articles of Confederation, when they wrote the Constitution of the United States, when they passed the 13 charters of the colonies and they federalized. They had best intentions. It doesn't matter if other people came in like world bankers and ended up corrupting the entire system, the one we live under today. It doesn't matter. This theory requires you to demonize the 13 colonies in the United States from its inception. And that's a third red flag. And we'll get to that too. Well, we begin this analysis with three major red flags. So, this presentation is dedicated. It's basically dedicated. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. That might be a surprise. So, those three red flags were enough for me to like look into this deeper. Like, okay, what's going on here? Who's involved? Who's pushing it? Why all of a sudden some new theory just explodes on social media? How did this happen? The Phoenix phenomenon never exploded on social media, and there's 1,000 data points more to support it than there ever was this bogus little theory. So why didn't the Phoenix phenomenon go viral? What's going on? Who's pushing? That could be a fourth red flag. Who's pushing this narrative and why? So, my AC just kicked on. I'm just curious. I'm just curious. Y'all don't hear it at all? Is my audio that good? My audio filtration system that good? You don't hear my AC because it's loud to me. I'm just curious. Don't even hear it. Wow. I love you, Apogee. $325 hype mic. I love you. And I love them boys that came to Texas to show me that mic. They pulled theirs out. Jason, you got to get one. They came to Texas, invited me to dinner, and showed me the mic. You got to get one of these. They weren't lying. Best investment ever. So, sharing a theory and bouncing ideas is always okay. There are many, many channels that have done the Satan's Little Season narrative. I'm not talking bad about those channels. I just talk bad about Jaydreamerz because I know his history. I know who he is, know where he came from. I know what type of individual he is, and I know all the things behind the scenes he's done against Archaix, networking with a bunch of my trolls, going on podcasts. You know, say, I'm focused on him right now. He's on the menu. May do a whole video about him. But right now, it's Satan's Little Season. Before we go into the particulars and the minutia that literally takes itself apart in the promotion of this theory, I need to let you guys know that I have somebody who's been listening to for Archaix who's been paying attention. And they wrote a book, and it's on Amazon right now. This is by Terry Lee. Name at the bottom, Terry Lee. This is a really interesting book, and it's short and it's to the point and doesn't waste any time on any type of filler. There's no filler work in this book. All it is just get straight to the point. That's all it's about. Is the Great Pyramid actually some type of machine? Got a lot of illustrations. It's pretty compelling. It's pretty compelling. You're going to get into a lot of stuff in here, but he didn't provide a video, but he shows how the compression chamber. Man, I got some images right here. Let me share my screen. And the link is in the description box for this book. But let me share my screen real quick so you can see some of these things that he showed me. Let's see here. Got a few things. So here's the book right here. The Internal Combustion Piezoelectric Electrochemical Hypothesis of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Man, it's a lie. It's a huge title, man. You need to put a colon in there or something. But yeah, that's the back of the book. The back of the book says, take a deep dive into the technology of our distant past with a detailed description of the Great Pyramid's strategy for producing incredible amounts of wireless power from water. What did I theorize about 3 years ago, guys? I theorized that the Great Pyramid had something to do with hydromancy, using water, hydrogen, as a power source. Presented by a career automotive technician and longtime student of the building, Terry Lee, a former ASE certified master auto technician with an L1 certification and an interest in things electrical. That's to the point. I already like the man. So yeah, it's so he gives a lot. He demonstrates a lot how different parts of the pyramid, with the shafts and the queen's chamber and the grand gallery, the antechamber, the king's chamber being a compression chamber, building pressure in the grand gallery, and then some of these exhaust. These aren't star shafts; they're exhaust shafts, and the exhaust is filtered out through the queen's chamber. I thought this is pretty interesting. So anyway, you can check out his book. He didn't provide a video. He just gave me some JPEGs to share with you guys. But yeah, that's let's see. Stop sharing. Good. Done sharing that. Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. But this is his book. This is his book right here, and the description. I mean, the link on Amazon is in the description box right now. You can check it out. You know what? I'm getting a little chilly. That thing works so good. So, as I said before, Jaydreamerz has at least 3 videos. He may have more, but 3 videos on Satan's Little Season. And this was the first red flag for me. It's like, man, okay, I might need to look into this. Because anything that man's promoting, man, I got to investigate. I'm still standing in the ground for 2 people who can't defend themselves. Brian and Mia, they're gone. Some people say they're killed. Other people have shared the coroner's report online. I've seen it myself. I don't know if it's the real thing or not, but I know that neither one of them have been able to defend the integrity of their research, because I'm very well aware that Jaydreamerz used to be a troll in their chat. They couldn't stand him, and they disappeared, and he ended up with Jaydreamerz channel with all the EMPCO research repackaged as the Plasma Apocalypse, where he got almost 100% of his material. And if you watch Mia's videos, which are way older than Jaydreamerz, and you go look at the all the core videos of Brian, I provide both links to both channels in the description box. You're going to see something really interesting. You're going to see the very style that Jaydreamerz uses on his channel. He got it from them. And all the little movie clips and all the sound bites and all these little things are put together, and they did a fantastic job. And I'm not gonna lie, Jaydreamerz got some pretty good content. He's got some really interesting, compelling content. A lot of it's super silly to me, but it doesn't matter. A lot of people like it. To me, he's just an entertainer. But he had JT follows JC on his channel. This is like the core foundational origin of the Satan's Little Season idea. And if he's not the origin, then that's a problem too, because this is what he's claiming on his videos, that he had just developed this theory and started putting these ideas out there on TikTok and in different places, and then just started blowing up. Next thing you know, he had 200,000 followers. And to me, it's just, I don't know what to think about all that, but I know this: I'm about to take JT follows JC's information, and I'm about to take it all the way down and reduce it to its lowest common denominators, and you're not going to like what you see. If you're a follower of this theory, Satan's Little Season, you're probably not going to like this video. I know Jaydreamerz isn't. I know he's not going to like it at all. So let me see here. So I know I see it in the chat every once in a while, and I tell you, I do not care. There's a lot of you new to my channel that don't know all the things I've been through, being prosecuted recently, going to jail, doing all, yeah, man, having all kinds of bullshit, all kinds of YouTubers attacking me last year. And many of you went through it with me. You understand what I'm saying? And new people new to my channel are like, damn, Jason, why are you focused on this dude? I'm really not. He wasn't even in my field until a couple of days ago when he started talking shit online again. So I decided, hey, man, it's time for me to go ahead and do something I was going to do anyway. So for those of you who don't know the history, you need to know it. You do need to know it because you need to know who you're listening to and where you're getting your information from. You need to know these things. So this, yeah, I'd already informed you guys that Jaydreamerz had actively gone on podcast and joined in the Archaix and Jason bashing, even bashing personal friends of mine. I don't have to do nothing with Archaix in my research. And he's attacked the entire Archaix community, calling you guys cultists just for listening to me. You're a cultist just for listening to me. It's crazy. So a couple of his Jason and Archaix viewer bashing posts on YouTube, because of the blowback, he took them down. But not before myself and other people got screenshots of them. I don't want to show them right now, but I will if you want to see them. But it's just pedantic. It is so childish. It's really childish. So he even went as far to write Montgomery County Court. Yeah, this dude wrote the Montgomery County Court a letter when I was being prosecuted, trying to sway court opinion, but my attorney neutralized it when he informed the court that, hey, man, Jason Tice is an ex-con. And this is nothing but jealousy between YouTubers. And it's just a YouTube channel attacking another YouTube channel and trying to weaponize the court to do it. And he's an ex-felon. So we really don't, this right here is really nothing. And the court agreed and just dismissed the letter. But yeah, he tried it. Sure the hell did. So I've also shared with you guys screenshots. I still have them, where Jaydreamerz did videos where he was literally bragging about being a participant in the little episode that led to me going to jail for a little while. Yeah, man. So it's just, you know what, anytime you weaponize law enforcement because you can't deal with somebody's critiquing your material, and you know what, you're a piece of shit. It's simple as that. I don't know how else to define it. I don't. Especially an ex-con. Oh my God, you just broke the code. You broke the code, man. You ever go back to Colorado Penitentiary and they find out what you did to me, you're in trouble. Those dudes ain't fixing to allow that to go down like that. Hell no. Find out you just willingly put on a snitch sweater. That's crazy. It's almost unbelievable. So the Satan's Little Season issue came to my attention because it was Jaydreamerz promoting it. 3 or 4 different videos, like I said. So if you guys remember, I posted on YouTube the photos of 2 like Men in Black type people, a male and a female with black hats, gray shirts, black backpacks, black slacks, and black shoes that came up on my property and walked into an entire bank of security cameras. I posted their pictures on YouTube. So they met me in a public place after for 2 days blowing up my phone, blowing up my email. So Martin Leakey, Cheryl, and Dawn all met in a public place, and we met these 2, and we literally watched them get dropped off by a car and a third individual, same way they appeared on my property. There's always a third individual on the team. The third individual stayed in the car and disappeared from the parking lot, leaving these 2 people. Martin Leakey didn't even waste any time. Are you Jewish? And the dude nodded, said, yeah. I kind of figured just by looking at him. But they sat me down and showed me a dossier on Jaydreamerz. Had a whole bunch of stuff on Jaydreamerz. And they tried to pay me $4,000 to bridge the Phoenix phenomenon to the plasma apocalypse of Jason Tice. And they did this in a dossier right in front of Dawn, right in front of Martin Leakey, right in front of Cheryl. And everything went out of control when I publicly posted their faces on YouTube. Many of you in the comment section remember their faces. I posted their faces on YouTube, and I've been honorable ever since and never posted them again on anywhere. I kept my word because everything changed once we met in public. Now, they didn't care if I worked with Jaydreamerz or not, trying to bridge the Phoenix phenomenon to the plasma apocalypse like I would ever even do that. Now, all they wanted to do was pay me $4,000 to take their faces off of YouTube. So right there, as Martin Leakey and Cheryl and Don were my witness, and the manager was my witness. He saw the transaction. I know him, the manager of the Texas Longhorn Steakhouse on I-45 in the Woodlands, Texas. We were in his parking lot. He came outside, watched the transaction as they paid me $4,000. And because that kind of put us on the spot, we were on the bench in front. I went ahead and invited them in, and we went in, and they only sat down long enough to just pick out a salad, and then they left, and then all the heat was over, and Martin, Don, and I, we just had dinner. We did dinner. But you guys remember this episode, and they this is a while back. So later on my channel, I posted a clip from Mia's Tiny Glass Slippers channel where she was explaining that the truther community is completely overrun with intelligence assets that are people that are working for intelligence agencies paid to spread disinformation. While she is saying this, she is showing Jason Tice's face, Jaydreamerz, on the screen talking. And she showed clips of him twice as she is explaining that there are people in the truther community who are specifically planted there to release disinformation. Now, okay, why? I'm not the one that made that up. I'm not the one that said it, and that video is still on YouTube. Mia and Brian's channels are still up. The links are in the description box. I didn't have to make anything up. Why is she showing this guy? I've got several. I even got one moderator who used to be on Mia's channel way back in the day and remembers Jaydreamerz was a troll. Man, he was just a troll. He didn't even have a channel yet. He was just a troll, always attacking them and stuff. And next thing you know, he's got the Jaydreamerz channel. They disappeared, and he's got all their stuff repackaged as the plasma apocalypse. I didn't have to make that up. You people on YouTube were the ones that saw all this unfold. So, yeah, it's a pretty sad story, actually. It's a pretty sad story. So, if you want to watch the video where I'm explaining this entire history, I go into more detail. It's on Archaix TV for free. You don't even have to be a member. The link is in the description box. I would appreciate my moderators would post that link, but that's a free video that YouTube took down because Jason Tice didn't like the fact that on Archaix his face was being showed as a woman was explaining that the CIA have trained and paid assets in the truther community who are releasing disinformation. This is what the video was about. The link is in the description box. I don't give a damn about pissing off Jaydreamerz. I know who he is, and I know who he is by his actions toward me. I don't give a damn what his defense is. I've already seen it. We always have to judge things by their effects. And all this is connected to the next big thing. What is it? Satan's little season theory. Promoted 3 times by Jaydreamerz, even having the main origin of the theory on his channel. That's where we're going with this. I'm going to leave Jaydreamerz alone for the rest of this video and just stick with the facts on Satan's little theory, Satan's little season theory. But I'm not fooled. I'm not fooled at all. I know damn well there's many truthers out there paid to release misinformation all over the field. And as long as I'm alive, I'm going to continue to dismantle that bullshit. I am. So links are in the description box. If you want to see that video that YouTube took down when Jason Tice cried about a copyright strike for a 7-second clip of his face being described as a CIA asset. Yeah, and anytime you want to doubt my story, ask Martin Leakey. Ask Martin Leakey. He was there for all of it. He was in Texas when all this unfolded. So yeah, the EMPCO, the plasma apocalypse derives from the original research of Brian and Mia. It's called EMPCO. It's the electromagnetic pulse something I can't even remember event. But Jaydreamerz repackaged it as the plasma apocalypse, man, and run with it. Real easy to do so when the original people who came out with it can't defend themselves no more. So this video is dedicated to Brian and Mia, who can't defend the integrity of their research from people who are lifting it and claiming it as their own. So Jason's going to stand in right for Brian and Mia and defend it for them. So Jesus came back in the year AD 70. Jesus came back in the year AD 70. What a year! The Romans, 10th German Legion, came in and mowed over all the outlying garrisons, got closer and closer to Jerusalem. Emperor Vespasian, he's been trying since 66 AD, 66, 67, 68, 69. He's trying, man, to take Jerusalem, but there's two strong garrisons. They've been waiting for this. And it wasn't the Romans attacking. It was Judea that revolted. So this is the Romans responding. And for 4 years, they attempted over and over and over trying to take Jerusalem, and they couldn't. It was too well defended. But Vespasian was sent back to Rome. He became the emperor. His son Titus took over the military campaigns. And his son Titus came with the death squad. The most feared legion in all the legions and provinces of all the Roman armies. The most feared legion was the 10th Legion. It was known as the German Legion. These were huge barbarian bastards from the far north that had been trained to fight Roman-style phalanx warfare instead of the blitzkrieg barbarian style. They were trained. These dudes were bad. They took Jerusalem in AD 70, razed it to the ground, salted the fields. 77,000 Jews were sold into the slave markets. 1.5 million were put to the sword, man, woman, and child. The Romans were fed up. They got tired of this bullshit. And I've already got other videos, you know, on Archaix TV and one on YouTube that kind of explain what was going on. We're not going into the details here. But the Romans they were fed up with the Jews, and they tried to genocide those people. So this is AD 70, and in this theory, Jesus came back. Everybody in the world saw him coming on the clouds of glory, because that's what the prophecies say. It's the great day of the Lord. All this stuff happens in AD 70 according to this theory. Jesus came back and brought the saints back with him. A paradigm shift happened, a 1,000-year reign. The camp of the saints is established. Jesus teaches peace for 1,000 years, starting in AD 70 at his return. The second coming already happened 19 and a half centuries ago. You missed the bus. That's what we're told. That's the theory. That's the theory, guys. Now, in order to promote this theory, the believer in this theory is going to have to cherry pick biblical passage in order to support it. Is going to have to cherry pick about 1% of the passages in the Bible and ignore the other 99% that do not comport. I'll explain in a minute. So they have to isolate prophecies of Jesus concerning his predicting that the temple in Jerusalem would be destroyed as alluding that he would somehow be there for this. Nowhere did Jesus ever say that when the temple was destroyed, he's going to be there. But this theory requires that when the temple of Jerusalem was destroyed, Jesus was going to be there. So this Judeo-centric theory is another red flag. This requirement of a belief that Jerusalem was ever important in the ancient world. I've got videos explaining, guys. It wasn't even on a trade route. Jerusalem's not mentioned by almost any nation in the entire world. Yeah, the holy city was Bethel, house of God, an Israelite city. The one further north of that was known by many nations was Kadesh. It was also known as the holy city. Not Jerusalem. It wasn't known by anybody. And it was so insignificant that even many armies just went right by it as inconsequential. The only time Jerusalem became integral to the history of the world is when the Jews hijacked the Israelite prophecies, the Israelite scrolls, the Israelite libraries after the year 745 BC, when the Assyrians took the 10 Commonwealth tribes of Israel and deported them to the frontiers of Assyria in the north, for which later they migrated into Central Asia, across the Caucasus into Europe, and across the Mediterranean. But Jerusalem was never important until the 5th century BC, when the Judeans got a hold of their libraries, rewrote all these things, and created what we know of today as the Old Testament, which is a bunch of Jewish redacted writings. But it doesn't matter. Let's stick with the evidence that they're using, and let's take that apart. So, in interpreting these biblical passages, these theorists, they claim passages that support their theory are literal, while those that contradict their theory are to be taken as metaphorical. That's cherry picking. So when you use Bible verses to promote your new theory, those Bible verses are literal. Look, it's literally saying right here. Okay, cool. But for the other 99% of the Bible verses that contradict your new theory, your defense is they're just metaphorical. Those are metaphorical. They're not to be taken literally. They're metaphorical. Yeah, you're being psyoped. I'm going to give you examples after I drink some more of this badass coffee. All right. So, in order to promote this theory, end times prophecies are shown that Jesus came back in AD 70 at the destruction of the temple. But like I said, none of these prophecies actually say that. And it's almost unbelievable and completely ignored. They completely ignore many other prophecies that could never have happened in the short 37 years between the crucifixion in AD 70 and the AD 70 event itself. What? This theory is asking you to believe that in Jesus's ministry, all these prophecies about the end of the world, all the prophecies that are mentioned throughout the New Testament, all the prophecies in the book of Revelation were fulfilled in the 37 years from his crucifixion in 33 AD to the fall of Jerusalem to Rome in AD 70. We're going to look at those prophecies, and I'm going to let you decide. So I was listening to JT Follows JC on another channel, and it really surprised me that he would even use as support for his theory the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. Again, of Jewish origin, but it doesn't matter. Let's just stick with that. Let's stick with that. So the guy who basically fomented this theory, he relies on the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, the prophecies attached to Daniel's 70 weeks. It is a prophecy linked to the destruction of the temple as evidence of Jesus returning in AD 70, and can only rely on this prophecy by ignoring the last elements of the prophecy, which he very, very cleverly omits. Yeah, I listened to 2 interviews of him. He describes the statue prophecy, the head of gold, Babylon, the breastplate of silver, Persia, the midsection, the gaiter, whatever it was of Greece, the bronze, and then the iron legs, which is Rome. But he stops right there. And I'm going to explain why it's necessary for him not to mention this when he's trying to promote this idea. So, Nebuchadnezzar's statue is basically showing a countdown of the empires that would rule Jerusalem before the return of the stone uncut by human hands, the return of the chief cornerstone. So, the stone the builders rejected. King Nebuchadnezzar has a nightmare. Daniel the prophet, one of his servants, is summoned to interpret the nightmare. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, tells the prophet Daniel, I saw a great statue, greater than all the statues of the world. And it had a head of gold, and it had the shoulder armor or whatever of silver, and it had the armor around the midsection of brass. And then the brass went into gaiters. Gaiters are leg armor, legs of iron, but the iron terminated into 10 toes that were mixed with miry clay. Yeah, this is what JT follows JC's not telling you. At the end of this prophecy, the stone comes from heaven and it hits the earth at the foot of the statue and shatters the metal empires of men. I've talked about this prophecy many times. When it shatters the statue, all the empires of men, which are represented by metals in depreciating value until the last days, when the stone uncut by human hands hits the earth, shatters the kingdoms of men, total systemic reset, which begins the stone kingdom, the technolithic kingdom. Remember what I tell you guys all the time, we're on a loop. And when we're looking forward, the farther we look into the future, the more clearly we see the past. All these technologically advanced civilizations were using stone in ways we can't even barely imagine. All the practice molds, all the technolithic artifacts that I've shared with you guys and explained to you that we are actually going toward that point again. We're on a loop. In this iteration, we have the statue of Daniel. The stone uncut by human hands hits, shatters, but it only does so after the 10 toes of iron are mixed with miry clay. Totally different building material here. Something different, because clay is really close to stone, not metals. So, in the historical record, Niccolo Machiavelli, and many other later historians, also Gibbon, who wrote all this whole collection of books, is Gibbon, wrote The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, and many, many hundreds of authors and researchers in the last 300, 400 years have all made the connection that in 476 AD, Rome fell by Odovacar the German, who led 10 independent, a commonwealth of nations. I'm using the word commonwealth because even in the Bible, Israel was called a commonwealth. They are the clay nations. Israel was later, thousands of years later, they had forgotten their identity. They had become Manasseh and Ephraim. They had totally forgotten their identity, who they are, and all. They were the ones walking through the valley of the shadow of death. They had totally fulfilled biblical prophecy to the point where they did not know their origin, forgot who they were, what they were connected to, and they were out there all across Central Asia, northern Asia, Europe, and the Isles. These people were the miry clay. They were mixed among many nations, many pedigrees, mixed DNA everywhere. Because remember, it was these 10 Commonwealth nations that were assimilationists. Remember, the Jews have never been assimilationists. Hell no, they're all about absolute, totally division, them against the whole world. Yeah, everybody's goy, except for them. They're children of God. That's not how the Israelite descended nations regarded other peoples. Now, strangers could come in and live among them as long as they adopted the ways, adopt the language, adopt the traditions. You're one of us. Simple as that. And often the stranger was treated with a more respect than the indigenous individual. This is the doctrine of the son. This is the sons of adoption doctrine that's always followed the clay nations. So here's what you're not being told. You're actually being told that this prophecy supports the idea that Jesus came in AD 70. And it does that by bridging the fact that in Daniel, it says the temple is going to be desolated and destroyed in a period of 42 months. 42 months, 1,260 days. 42 months is exactly 3.5 years. Okay, we have a problem with that in Archaix. Because one, 476 AD is way after 70 AD. And in 70 AD, Rome was still one. But the biblical prophecy that JT follows JT is citing literally shows Rome has divided into two. And this is exactly what the historical record shows. Because the left leg is the Western Roman Empire, Imperial Rome, which was later the inheritance of the Vatican. The right leg is the Greek Orthodox Roman Empire. It is the Byzantium version of Rome, which later became Constantinople. Rome did divide, the Roman powers did divide, and in that division, by the time of the 5th century AD, Roman provinces were already so assimilated with all the locals throughout Europe and Britain. I mean, remember Hadrian's Wall? They were so assimilated with the Germans, Burgundians, the Huns, the Ostrogoths, the Goths, the Visigoths, the Lombards. They were so integrated with all these people that there was no distinguishing them anymore. The 10 toes, the 10 Commonwealth nations of Europe that ended up conquering Rome in 476 adopted the Roman laws, Roman institutions, and even Roman DNA. And these 10 toes are the 10 nations that conquered Rome. And it's only after Rome is conquered by the 10 nations that the stone uncut from human hands will come down and then destroy all evidence of the metal empires of humanity and will exalt, because clay is nothing but a symbol for the permanence of stone. Because when you apply fire to clay, it becomes hard as rock. The spiritual peoples of the world represented as clay, we were made from clay. This is what our Bibles tell us. So what we have here is a theory that requires you to not listen to the rest of the prophecy about about Rome dividing for a long period of time, 4 centuries, and then Rome being destroyed by Israelite descended peoples. And then the stone uncut by human hands can't even fall and destroy all the total systemic reset until after these 10 Commonwealth nations have run their course. So we have some really interesting and compelling things happening here. But JT follows JC in promoting this theory, tells you in his interviews that, well, we know that AD 70, Jesus had to have come back because Daniel's weeks that are attached to this prophecy ended 3.5 years of warfare, because it took 3.5 years for Rome to take Jerusalem. I'm sorry, that's the worst thing in the world to tell a chronologist, because I know for a fact that was a 7-year war. It was a 7-year war, and it's even mentioned in a 7-year war by a source material that JT follows JC cites, Josephus, one of the Flavians. Flavius Josephus wrote about the 7-year war. It didn't even end in AD 70. Jerusalem was destroyed, but there were still outlying garrisons and fortresses, and they still had another 3 years of fighting to do before they had completely subdued Palestine. So, yeah, that's I'm not. They have to cherry pick what they want to talk about the biblical prophecies and put them together and mishmash them, but it just doesn't work that way. So I'm going to go up here real quick. Hold on. I don't want to mix my notes up, so I'm going to go ahead and just cut all that out since I've already saved it, another file. So I need to address the Roman war. Oh, there goes my pit. So the little season theory requires that the book of the book of Daniel, is giving you evidence that in AD 70, the stone uncut by human hands hit the world in AD 70, and that's actually a metaphor for Jesus came back. And they use the 42 months to link it to the statue, Daniel's statue. It's a lot of taking. You can't take an unknown and add it to another unknown, and then it's going to equal something that is known. This is what they're doing here. It's not. It doesn't even make sense. But it doesn't make sense for another reason, because JT follows JC as an error. That war was not 3.5 years at all. So I have here in my notes, the Judean War with Rome lasted 7 years. Jerusalem revolted in the year 66 AD and drove Roman forces out in a series of battles. Yeah, Rome just didn't go in there and invade them. No, they were a Roman province, and they enjoyed all the rights, privileges, and immunities of all the Roman provinces, and they had agreed to it in the past. And then turn around, they revolted. So they don't want to be a province no more. That's their right. They had a right to revolt against Rome. But they revolted not in AD 70, they revolted in AD 66. Vespasian of Rome attacked in the year 67 and 68. And he reconquered many of the Jewish strongholds that had been taken from the Romans the year before. In 69, Vespasian became the emperor of the Roman Empire, and his son Titus, who was a general, took over the assault against Judea. In the year 70 AD, the German 10th Legion joined in the siege of Jerusalem. This would have struck terror into the hearts of all the locals as soon as they knew that the 10th Legion was coming. The city and the temple are destroyed. So in the following year, throughout 70 and in 71, 72, and in 73, the Romans still sent legionnaires to places all over Palestine, because just because Jerusalem fell, there were still many other fortresses and strongholds that were in rebellion. The war continued. It finally ended when the last stronghold, Masada, in AD 73 held out on a super high cliff. The Romans saved it for last because they couldn't do anything. They were just hiding up there. And when the Romans sieged it, the Jews committed suicide on the Rome. This is in the 7th year of the war. JT follows JC as an absolute error when he tries to tell you that Daniel's 42 months or 3.5 years was fulfilled in Jesus coming back in AD 70, because Jesus never came back in AD 70. The Romans were too busy kicking ass in Palestine for another 3.5 years after that. He's wrong. It's a 7-year war. In addition to that, we have a problem too with the idea that there was only one destruction of Jerusalem, because there was two. These two destructions of Jerusalem are the hallmark of Jewish history all throughout the Talmud and the Talmudic commentaries and all the later Jewish writings, all the rabbinical writings. The Jewish calendar, Jewish chronology is all based off not the first destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, but the second, the Bar Kokhba rebellion, where a prophet named Jesus stood before the walls for 7 years and proclaimed to the Sadducees and the Pharisees, "Woe unto you," and told them that every stone would be removed. Jerusalem was doomed. It was going to fall, and did this from the year 127 AD to 134 AD, when the Romans came and subdued the Jews in the Bar Kokhba rebellion, and then took every stone down, salted the fields, turned Palestine into a desert, sold the Jews off into the slave markets, and anybody else they couldn't carry away, they put them to the sword, and Jews fled to the only places they could go. Northern Africa, where there was a huge Jewish community around Alexandria, and also all over Europe and all the colonies that opened their doors to them because they were the Jews. They had already sewed up the trade routes. They were well known by all different nations, and what was going on in Rome. When Rome persecuted people, other nations would open their doors to those who were persecuted, and that's how a lot of Jewish blood entered into different countries in Europe. So there wasn't one destruction of Rome. There were two. And any Jew will tell you the history of the two destructions of Jerusalem. So let me remove that note. We got some serious notes to go through, guys. So I'm not trying to confuse anything. I have me a little syllabus put together here, and I may even publish it if you guys want a free PDF of all these notes. I know Jaydreamerz wants it. Yeah, but that was the Bar Kokhba rebellion. Very well written about. So yeah, you can't build a theory, guys, by taking an unknown and then adding it to another unknown and then trying to promote the idea that you have found something. It just doesn't work that way. So another really weird thing. So Jesus came back in AD 70. The millennial reign begins. The camp of the saints is established. Jesus teaches peace and teaches whatever. It's a golden age. All this happens in AD 70, according to this idea, this theory. But there's a really weird problem with that. And it concerns the Dark Ages and what they're claiming the Dark Ages really were. But you know what? We're going to get to that later because we need to look at the prophecies. I need to quit skipping around because the prophecies are where it's at. We're going to go to the prophecies first. So now, in the biblical material, we have Jesus promoting many things. He prophesied many things. Well, in this theory, JT follows JC, and those who follow and those who are also promoting this idea have allowed themselves to cherry pick 3, maybe 4 things in the Bible that are prophetic and say that they are evidence that Jesus came back in AD 70 and that the 1,000-year reign happened, and that we are currently living in Satan's little season because something like 700 years was added to the calendar. And they have to say that because nothing makes sense about this theory unless you create the confusion that something has been left out, which is a communist doctrine. I've told you guys all the time. It was a part of one of the main communist agendas was to get everyone in the world to dismiss their history, dismiss the accomplishments of their predecessors, totally befuddle them on the world chronology, and do it because it's easier to control. You can build a whole new empire and control everybody once you erase their history, once you cast doubt on those histories. So it seems very communist to me, but check this out. Why do little seasoned theorists cherry pick the words of Jesus? If you're going to quote Jesus on one thing, you need to quote him on everything. If you're going to claim that he came back in AD 70, 37 years after he was crucified, you need to be able to show that in everything that he said, not just cherry pick 2 or 3 verses. Here are things that Jesus himself said must come to pass before he returns. He said, and anybody can verify this, most of this is in Matthew chapter 24. But there will be conflicts between nations and kingdoms, and these conflicts will increase. Okay, well, after these 37 years, that shit's happened even more. More's happened in the 17, 18, and 1900s than ever happened in the 1st century AD. Natural disasters and food shortages will occur in different places. Did that happen in those 37 years, or has it happened in the last 300 or 400 years? The followers of Jesus will be hated, persecuted, and killed. Okay, every Christian is raised to believe that Christians were being wiped out and martyred and all this stuff was going on in the 1st century AD. The problem with that is there's no evidence. There are no 1st century authors that ever said anything like this. I have shown this on my channel ad nauseum. We have the 1st century is one of the most well-documented centuries ever. As a matter of fact, there are many historians that really believe that Fox's Book of Martyrs, where almost 100% of this data came from, is a church invention, just like the donation of Constantine, which is 100% of Vatican forgery, trying to claim that Constantine bequeathed the entire Roman Empire to the church. It was a forgery, and it's been proven to be a forgery because they quoted a version of the Bible that didn't even exist at the time of Constantine's death. Totally stupid mistake. So Fox's Book of Martyrs is about the origin of this material. There are no 1st century records that even talk about all Christians being martyred and all. It wasn't. But there are records of the followers of Mithras. A Roman legion even had to be decimated because the legion refused to butcher a community because almost all of them were followers of Mithras. Mithras was an Eastern religion that had filtered into Rome. It was a spiritual religion, and it taught men to forgive each other. and it taught that their God was born on December 25th. He was a solar deity, but he was the Alpha and Omega. And many of the things in the Mithras religion were copied later by the church and added to the Jesus narrative. But we do have records of the decimation of the Roman legion. Every 10th man was killed on the spot because they chose to follow Mithras instead of following the Roman general. But we don't, that's what decimation comes from, killing every 10th person. I know people standing in that line going, oh man, I hope I'm number 9. Man, I know that sucks. You got to stand at attention while they count. Every 10th man dies. Sucks. That would suck. So, yeah. So you have to understand, not a single first century document exists telling of any type of Christians being killed and martyred. They're all ex post facto impositions, rewritings of history. Remember, we're talking about a theory that's saying Jesus came back in AD 70, but there's not one single Christian document that survived from the first century. And the second century Christian documents that talk about Jesus don't even start surfacing until AD 170 to 175. That's a problem. And none of those documents talk about Jesus came back in AD 70. So why would all 100% of all Christian documents, all church father writings, all come out after AD 70 by at least 70 to 150 years, and not one of these said anything about Christ coming back in AD 70, when they're all ex post facto impositions? Doesn't even make sense. So do we throw hundreds of texts and authors and writings and historical and archaeological? Do we throw all that out the window, or do we throw this crappy theory out the window? I'll let you decide. So Jesus prophesied that before he returns, many will fall away from the faith and betray one another. It's not very specific. We can pass over that. He said lawlessness will increase and love will grow cold. Do you think that happened in the 37 years, or is it happening more in the last 300 years? He also said that the gospel must be proclaimed to all nations before the end comes. I know this didn't happen. I know damn well this didn't happen in the 37 years, because we pretty much have a good idea over a 15th century period when Christianity entered different European nations. Yeah, it was a very slow process. Yeah, because paganism, the pagan and the indigenous beliefs, they were fighting back. Yeah, the whole world. The gospel was not proclaimed to all the nations before the end comes. Jesus even said that the news of the gospel will be spread to all the cities of the world before he returns. Did that happen? No, it did not happen. It didn't happen. So Jesus said that before his return, there will be a time of unparalleled suffering. No time like it before. Okay, did that happen in those 37 years? Because I can identify many periods in the Dark Ages, Middle Ages, the Renaissance period, and even up till today, where there's been far more suffering than anything we have in the historical record happening under the Roman Empire in the 1st century AD, in those 37 years. There will be a worldwide persecution of Christians before Jesus returns. How is that possible? In the 37 years between the crucifixion and AD 70, the apostles hadn't had time to even be worldwide. So no, we're going to say that's a deal killer too. Also, the sun will darken, the moon will not shine, or the moon will turn red. The stars will fall, the earth will be moved from its place. Yeah, all that is going to happen before. All that's going to happen before, guys. The return of Christ. So I'm going to ask you, has that happened? Now, I heard JT follows JC. I heard him really wrestling with that one, because he was trying to explain that on another channel, and he was quoting Josephus, and he was saying, oh yeah, there's a comet and it appeared for like 70 days, or there's an eclipse, and yeah, stop it. In the first 500 years AD, there's over 300 eclipses and comets recorded. Yeah, stop it. Just stop it. Yeah. For Jesus to isolate that the sun is going to go dark and the moon is going to turn red, the stars are going to fall from the sky, is going to be a worldwide phenomenon, not a local phenomenon, not something that's only seen locally by a few million people. It's going to be experienced by the entire world, or it wouldn't even fit within the narrative. So, no, those prophecies never came to pass. So, but they're not the only prophecies. There's other New Testament prophecies. So if you're going to be a Christian, you're going to promote this idea, this theory of Satan's little season, you're also going to have to ignore other prophecies in the New Testament. These are prophecies that these guys aren't talking about. They don't want to draw attention to these prophecies. Here's one right here in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. Let no one deceive you in any way, for that day will not come unless the rebellion comes first. It's called the apostasy, the great falling away of Christianity. Well, in the 37 years between 33 AD and AD 70, there couldn't have been an apostasy because Christianity hadn't even taken off yet. And the first Christian records hadn't even been published for 150 years in the future. Couldn't happen. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 through 4. And the man of lawlessness be revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship. So, in their defense, this Antichrist who's going to deceive the whole world has been reduced to a particular by these people who promote this theory of Satan's little season. And they isolate the Roman emperor Nero. And they say, well, Nero was evil and Nero was wicked. He did all these things. He's the man of sin. Nero was the Antichrist. And I'm going to call bullshit on that, because you're isolating a particular from that little bitty time period that didn't even affect the rest of the world. However, not only that, you have to understand why Nero was demonized. Who demonized him? Who rewrote those records? Everything from Tatian, Tacitus, Livy, all the original Roman writings, they've all been rewritten. They've gone through Jewish and Christian filters. Nero was demonized for a reason, because he had a Jewish wife. And when the Jews were in full rebellion against Rome and causing all kinds of financial strife and problems, Nero retaliated. And the original people that were thrown in the lions' dens and thrown in the Colosseums and impaled and run out of Rome were not Christians. They were Jews. And the histories have been rewritten. Pompeia was a Jewish woman of extreme beauty, and Nero married her, not realizing that she's really just an agent who's working against him and working for her people. And when this became known, he kicked her. She was pregnant. He kicked her. Yeah, that's not a good thing to do, no matter who she is. It doesn't matter. But he did that. And he earned the ire of those people. And the historical redactionism kicks in. And when these people have taken over other people's writings, they rewrite them and they paint people that they don't like and unfavorable. Look what had to Vlad Dracul. Yeah, Bram Stoker, Jewish, turned him into a monster, Dracula. But to his people, he was a hero. But the Jews hated him, the Vatican hated him, and the Muslims hated him, the Turks hated him. But Vlad Dracul was a man of the people, just like Mithridates, the Poison King, the king of Mithridates IV, king of Pontus, hated by Rome, so they demonized him. Tigranes hated, so they demonized him. Yeah, this is Germania. You've never even heard of Germania. In the 1st century AD, Germania was already rising up like he's going to be the next Alexander the Great, but he's the Roman version. His name was Germania. They ended up killing him because they saw his star was shining. His star was rising. Yeah, most of you have never even heard of the story. I need to do a video on that, the story of Germania. Hell yeah, the Romans hurried up and killed him because they saw this dude's going to change everything. So, anyway, yeah, this they took the Antichrist and just made it Nero, but we don't have any evidence that Nero was really as evil as they say. All we have is that Nero was extremely hated on, and you can't say that redactionism for political reasons isn't even a possibility. Look what they did to the people of World War II. Look what they did to Germany's ruler. Yeah, it hasn't even been 90 years, and the whole world believes almost something that is the exact opposite of what actually happened. Yeah, there you go. 1 Timothy 4:1. The Spirit expressly says that in the latter times, some will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits and things taught by demons. Okay, did that happen on a universal level in the 37 years between 33 AD and AD 70? Did it happen? 2 Timothy 4:3-4. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine. Did that happen in those 37 years? Because the sound doctrine that's being referred to here hadn't even spread over the world yet. It's crazy. It's crazy. We'll get to Josephus here in a minute. We got to talk about Josephus. Yeah, we have to understand, guys. I mean, if you're going to believe in the biblical material, but you're going to refuse to entertain so much of it just to promote some new theory, I mean, where do you fit? Where do you fit the verse that God is not the author of confusion? Where do you fit that verse? How do you fit that one in there now? Because sure, man, I hear tank going off out there. So, look, I'm hypercritical, guys, because even by their own admission, listen to the interviews. I mean, the little season is a theory that took off. It just took off. It went viral. How, though, when the very people who talk about it openly admit in their interviews that, most of them they're YouTubers that get their inspiration from movies. They say this in these podcasts. Yeah, they get their inspiration from movies. I believe JT Follows JC did an interview a few weeks ago. He said, well, he gets his inspiration from comic books. He said that. So, I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it. There are those of us in the community that are very well read and we understand the historical record. And the only way you could dismiss all of this material is to first engage with it, assess it. So what we have here are people who have almost no educational background whatsoever, be it autodidactic or formal establishment education. They can so easily dismiss centuries of archaeology, anthropology, history, traditions, all the ancient texts, everything. They can easily dismiss it because they don't know it. So it's so easy for them to dismiss, which doesn't bother me at all. I deal with ignorant people all the time. It just astounds me how these ignorant theories go viral. It's like, what the hell? How's this happening? To me, it's just crazy. So, but in order to promote this theory, though, they have to come from the position of believing that Jesus was a historical person, because it's fundamental to this theory. Anybody who doesn't believe Jesus was a historical person can easily dismiss this theory. I'm not doing that video for you guys. You guys already know my position. You already know my position on that. So these theorists are absolutely not learned in any chronological matters whatsoever. They don't even know the first thing about being a chronologist and what it really entails. So they're not well read and they don't have any historical knowledge. That's the only way they can actually pass off a theory like this. And also, it kind of puts critics at odds, because to attack the little season theory is going to be translated as an attack on Christianity. So, but it's really an attack. But it's really an attack on the Christians themselves, because it's a mind. It's, you know what it is. Beep. I don't want to say it. But man, it's terrible. It is a theory that if you accept it, you must also accept that, damn, Jesus already came and I missed the bus. And that's got to hurt. Because I used to be a Christian for over 40 years. Well, 40 years. And I'm going to tell you, that would have hurt me if I'd ever even heard of a theory like that. It would have had me in shock. I mean, I got to listen to everything I can, try to put this together and make sure these guys are really telling me the truth. Hell yeah, I'd be going into overdrive trying to figure that out. Maybe that's why I went viral. Put everybody on panic. Like, what? Could this be true? Yeah, it's crazy. It's so crazy. By the end of this video, you ain't going to believe it. You ain't going to believe that bull crap. I promise you that. So the little seasoned theorists, they claim that the book of Revelation now is a book of prophecy. It's part of the New Testament. And this is the book of the revelation of Jesus Christ. The book of Revelation prophecies have all come true in the 37 years between 33 AD and AD 70. What TF? I'm going to say that again. The book of Revelation prophecies, the whole book of Revelation, the prophecies, from which they get their data in Revelation chapter 20 about Satan being loosed for a little season. The prophecies of the book of Revelation have all been fulfilled, almost all fulfilled. About 99% of it fulfilled to get to that point, Revelation chapter 20, have all been fulfilled before the return of Christ, which was in AD 70. 37 years, that's a lot of prophecies to unpack. So when did these prophecies get fulfilled? And how come we have absolutely no record of them? We have no record of them. Additionally, we have the added problem that the book of Revelation, according to the church, was penned in the year 96 AD. That's 26 years after Jesus supposedly came back in AD 70. The book of Revelation was penned in 96 AD by John, who was a prisoner on the Isle of Patmos. So the prophecies of the book of Revelation were actually fulfilled before they were ever even written down. That's amazing. That is a true miracle. I'm going to drink to that. Go ahead and give me some coffee. Oh, man. Best part of waking up. Archaix in my cup. All righty. So, when pressed as to how this is possible, JT and others who promote this theory say, well, time has been changed. Let's see, everything's been changed. And centuries were added to the timeline. And this is where it just gets really, really confusing, because these guys don't even know either. Because they talk about the Dark Ages. Jesus came back in AD 70, a 1,000-year reign, but they're quick to talk about 536 AD, Justinian darkness, and when the whole world was basically destroyed, and it began the Dark Ages. And there's no bridge between 536 and 70 AD. So they claim all these centuries were invented. They have to claim that. They have to omit over 500 years in order to make this theory work. They have to just totally erase all this history. It just gets really confusing trying to listen to them disentangle all this, trying to make their theory, fit with the facts. So the 1,000-year reign of Christ, or the millennia, began in AD 70, but there was never a time after AD 70 when there was no peace. There isn't a single historical episode. There are no ancient authors, no writers, no monuments. There are no architecture. There's no archaeology, nothing to support a period of a 1,000-year golden age in any time in history. It doesn't exist. There have always been wars, plagues, diseases, earthquakes, natural disasters. There's always been tombs, catacombs, piles of bones. Yeah, there's never been a golden age, a period of peace, ever. That's a hard one there to swallow. So you have to understand too, the cherry-picked versions of what Jesus says. This is important. Jesus says, okay, this is the evidence that they're using, Jesus' words. The problem is, if Jesus came back in AD 70, how come his words were never ever recorded until at least 100 years after that? The Gospels didn't even appear until 100 years after that. How'd that happen? How did that happen? Again, was the entire New Testament written ex post facto, meaning it's all made up? And all the prophecies are actually written after they were supposedly fulfilled. That's even worse. So, yeah. There were no gospels in existence. There was no gospel records. There were no Christian writings. Nothing in existence in AD 70. So there's 37 years here between the crucifixion and Jesus coming back in AD 70, for which the historical record is absolutely silent on Christianity. It just doesn't exist. In addition to that, to believe in Satan's little season, we have to believe that in those 37 years, the 7 seals, which you guys know I've done a lot of research on, the 7 seals have all been fulfilled. The phoenix has returned, the sun went dark, turned black as sackcloth of hair, the moon turned red, the stars fell from the sky, the kings and rulers of the earth hid underground in the caves and prayed to God not to do anything to us. The first, second, third, and fourth, and fifth seals, 6 seals, they've all come to pass. They're done. The 7th seal is done. The first trumpet, the second trumpet, the third trumpet. God has already reduced by a third everything in the creation that he had made in the book of Genesis, because that's what the trumpets are about. If you read the trumpets, you're reading the book of Genesis in the first two chapters, where God made everything and designed it, and he said it was good. Day, light, sun, moon, stars went off. Mankind. But that's not what we have in Revelation. In Revelation, in reverse, God reduces by a third the moon, the stars, the sun, the day, the night, and mankind. Reduced it all by a third. So the 365 day becomes 243 days, and that's a year. And a 24-hour day becomes 16 hours a day. And the human population is reduced by a third. 1/3 of the entire world is killed in the trumpets. In the trumpet judgments. So all this happened then in the historical record, and now we're living in a period of time after those events, in a small period called Satan's little season. So if that's the case, what happened with the Battle of Armageddon? Because it was the Battle of Armageddon that Satan was subdued when Jesus returned. It's called the Day of the Lord. There's so many prophecies in the Old Testament about the Day of the Lord. And the day of the Lord comes, the day of the Lord's wrath, the world's going to be destroyed. And then we have, in the book of Revelation, the Battle of Armageddon. They come together, and Jesus comes with the saints from the sky, and the devil, the great dragon, is overturned, and he's cast into a pit. And it's only after Satan is put into a confinement cell, it's only after that the millennial reign of Christ begins, the 1,000 years. And then after the 1,000 years, the devil is loosed for a little season. When did all this happen? That's all I'm asking. When in the historical, archaeological, traditional record did all that happen? So, we're far from done, guys. My God, this thing's cold. So what about the first century authors? How would they omit this? On my X posts and all over YouTube and in my published books, I list over 20 different authors that were all prolific in the first century AD. Wasn't just Pliny the Elder. His son, Pliny the Younger, too, was also a writer. Man, what about Tacitus? Why didn't they write about this? How are you going to cite Josephus as a source material and then ignore that Josephus didn't say anything about the return of Christ, or Christians for that matter, in his writings? How do you deal with that duplicity? How can you openly cherry pick like that and expect everybody to fall for it? A lot of people have fallen for it, but how do you do it? How do you do it? These theorists quote Josephus. But Josephus never wrote about these events. Never wrote about Jesus coming back in AD 70. Yeah, so Josephus never wrote anything about miracles of Jesus. Never quoted a parable of Jesus. Josephus wrote nothing about anybody who's in the gospel narrative at all. Didn't write anything about anything that Jesus had done. Any of the teachings of Jesus, none of those are in the writings of Josephus. And Josephus's writings are epic. Here they are. All 4 of those big books right there these are the complete writings of Josephus. First century AD, nothing. He mentioned some Christians, and that's a lot of scholarship believes it's an interpolation, but it doesn't even matter. Doesn't even matter, because a lot of people from India were coming over at that time, and the Krishna belief was strong, especially in Antioch, which is essentially the origin of Christianity, Antioch. So we have it's just crazy. Josephus wrote about the temple being destroyed. He did, but he never wrote about the return of Jesus. How do you reconcile that? How do you use Josephus as a source, but then totally ignore Josephus's writings? It doesn't even make sense. Doesn't even make sense. All right. Oh, y'all, we're not done. I promise you, we are not done. So the idea that, so I listened to JT when he was talking to somebody. I can't remember the guy he was talking to, but you know, he's passionate, or MK Ultra. I don't know, whatever. It's just, but he relies on the 6th century writings of the worldwide destruction that happened. I've talked about this many times. Great Justinian darkness. I've even told you guys about my lunch break. Did a fantastic video where he showed that the world population statistics, if you extrapolate and go backwards, show that we were at 0 point in the 6th century AD. And I praised my lunch break for that research. It was amazing, because it absolutely comports with the secret history written by Procopius, who told us about all the crazy stuff that was going on in the world in the 6th century. And many of you guys know my research, and you know that it was the 6th century. It was 522 AD when 2 different timelines collided. I've got so many videos about this. The Phoenix phenomenon on the 138-year periodicity actually hit a Phoenix cycle of 552 years on 522 AD. At the exact same time that the 792-year periodicity of the Nemesis X object, it is the only time in world history that these two objects were in our skies in the same year. I've even gone as far as to do a video showing you that 8,000 years into the future and 5,000 years before the timeline began in 5239 BC, this never happens when Nemesis X and the Phoenix object are in our skies in the same year. But it happened in 522, which just happened to begin the Great Justinian Darkness period, which happened to begin the Dark Ages. The sun dimmed for a long period of time, worldwide starvation, plagues, earthquakes, cities were swallowed up all over the Mediterranean and Europe. I've documented a lot. I have whole books about it right here. I'm going to show you. It was terrible. But JT cites this period somehow as evidence. Well, this is the book of Revelation right here. How is that the book of Revelation when you're saying Jesus came back in AD 70? There's a huge anachronism here that you can't reconcile unless you confuse everybody with saying, well, they switched up the timelines. That's your answer for every time something is chronologically in error. They messed up the timelines. They added time. Okay, that's really easy to confuse someone who doesn't know. But you can't take 536 AD and put it before AD 70. There's no way to do it. You can't take an unknown and add it to another unknown and then tell everybody you know something. You can't do it. So, the reason JT and others focus on the Great Justinian Darkness period of destruction, what started the Dark Ages, the reason is because they have to mention it. It's too well known. They have to mention it and try to reconcile it in with their theory. Why? Because Jesus returned in AD 70, according to them, and that means the millennial reign, 1,000 years, would have been all over that period. So they have to say that somebody messed up the timelines. They have to, because their theory falls apart without it. Without casting doubt on the integrity of the historical record, their theory completely falls apart. You can't have because that's halfway through the millennial reign of Jesus Christ. All of a sudden, all this epic destruction happens everywhere because the whole world was destroyed. It was depopulated. It just doesn't work. Just doesn't work. I can see it now. Halfway through the millennium, people are listening to Jesus, teach them about all kinds of things. Why it's taken 500 years, I don't know. But this is what's going on in the camp of the saints. And then all of a sudden, the sun starts going dark. And then Jesus has to tell them, I'm sorry, guys. Did I say it was 1,000 years? Come on, man. Come on, man. So, The Secret History of Procopius is a book that I've cited before. It's a very interesting book. It's a stark contradiction to the little season theory. Procopius wrote of the wickedness of Justinian and Theodora, and he even called Emperor Justinian, he called him Satan. He said he was the devil. Yeah, Procopius hated these people. Theodora tortured women, tortured men. It's all in the secret history. But this was only 500 years after Jesus allegedly came in AD 70. So JT follows JC and others have to promote the idea that timelines have been skewed and mixed up and history's been rewritten, and all the official historians except Josephus, but all the other first century authors can't be trusted, only Josephus, because Josephus said something about the destruction of the temple which supports their theory. Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, there's 21 or 22 first century authors for which we have their writings today, and none of them mention these events because Jerusalem wasn't shit in the first century to anybody. Yeah. Remember, guys, this whole theory also requires a Judeo-centric belief system to believe that the Jews had this much power back then to where everybody in the world was just waiting on pins and needles about what's going to happen to Jerusalem. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. This is all redacted, rewritten histories about their importance. It's just it's crap. It's total crap. All right, let me see the syllabus. So, JT and others have to cast doubt about something for which they know nothing about. And that is the implementation of the Anno Domini calendar. This is how they get people to cast doubt on their own timeline and own chronology. It's by saying, well, they invented the AD calendar to hide the fact that Jesus already came back. And they started the AD calendar like 500 something years after Jesus was born. And every bit of that is untrue. I have a video explaining exactly why, where the church even admits why they invented that calendar. It was invented in 526, the exact year that Antioch was wiped off the map in a terrible earthquake. 526 was just 4 years after 522 AD, when the Phoenix and the Nemesis X object were both here. Worldwide destruction, volcanism, the sun going dark, England and other countries reporting the appearance of sky dragons and celestial dragons in the sky, red rain, red mud, earthquakes, tsunamis. All this was going on all over the world, and it continued for a period of 18 to 20 years. It was terrible what was going on in the world then. The world was literally falling apart. So the Roman Church at that time of 526 AD had an agent. They created the Anno Domini calendar, but it still wasn't even, it was used 200 years later in different areas, and in other areas 300 years later, it just slowly developed. It slowly developed over a period of time. By 500 years later, everybody was using that system. But it didn't just get invented and then turn around and usurp the Julian calendar. The Julian calendar was still being used. Many calendrical systems were still being used, and the AD system was specifically designed to hide. This is what is published in the historical record. The AD system was specifically designed to hide an older calendar that was based on cycles of 552 years. My Archaix veterans can tell you what the hell that is. I didn't make that up. I cited Alexander Delmar's research from the year 1900, where he delved into these calendrical matters. And I have the video on YouTube that shows all these things, even the pages from the book that talk about this. The AD calendar was specifically designed to hide the Phoenix calendar. 100%. And they did it. So this theory tries to say that the AD calendar was used to hide the 1,000-year millennium. None of this is in any historical records. This is a brand new belief. What we're dealing with is a new theory that is specifically designed to sucker in Christians. It is flamenco repackaged, so more people will accept the idea that centuries were added and entered. And it's also communist because it completely denigrates the beginning of the United States of America. Yeah, remember the Vatican, there's a papal bull. Even when the United States started with its constitution, the Vatican retaliated with a papal bull that declared that the Constitution of the United States is a satanic document. And all it does is declare that all men are free and they get their rights from God, not from government. Yeah, man. So this Satan's little season theory requires you to accept that all archaeological findings, all texts, all the ancient libraries, all the ancient authors, monumental inscriptions, everything from all over the world in different languages, different cultures, in different time periods is all false, because every single bit of it had to be rewritten in order to hide that Jesus came back in AD 70. Are you willing to swallow that pill? It's crazy. Oh no, we're not done. I already know you guys are like, damn, Jason, that's pretty heavy. Oh no, absolutely not. We are not done. Let me check. I haven't checked my chat since I have started this video, so we're going to go into phase 2 of this video. Phase 2. No pill. Leslie Pickett, I like you already. No pill. No pill. All right, chat looks like it's going good. Phase 2 of this video. Some of you guys got character. You got some real character. I know Jaydreamerz is watching. Jaydreamerz, I'm about to go into phase 2. Why don't you do a video and try to take this shit apart? Yeah, man. Let's see. All right. Everything's good. Let's do it. Let's do it. I almost accidentally hit my barf parrot intro. Yeah, man, a commonwealth of nations. This is what Israel is called in the Old Testament, a commonwealth of nations. I'm sorry, Paul in the New Testament called Israel a commonwealth. Commonwealth of 13 colonies were a commonwealth. The Europeans were a commonwealth in the days in the days of 476 AD, when Odovacar the German came together and brought the 10 peoples of Europe together to finally fight against Rome and take it down. These are the 10 toes. The 10 toes of miry. This is iron mixed with miry clay. The institutions of iron imposed upon a spiritual people. 10 toes of iron mixed with. This is the part of the prophecy that they omit because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to talk about because the legs of iron are 2 legs. These are 2 different divisions of the Roman power, which the historical record shows went way beyond AD 70 and extended all the way to 476 AD, when the legs were basically cut off by the toes, and the Byzantine Empire, the Greek Orthodox Church and Byzantine Empire, became the Eastern Roman Empire. That's what it was, the Eastern Roman Empire of Constantinople. And the Roman emperors ruled from the Eastern Empire, Constantinople, but the church maintained its power in Rome, in the western leg of iron. Yeah, and this continued on. It continued on all the way through all the way past 1776, all the way till Vatican pretty much lost its power. Now, all right, 1776. Why is 1776 on my mind? Well, 1776 is interesting because in prophetic, it is 7 times. It is the re-emerging of a commonwealth of spiritual people after a commonwealth of spiritual people were cursed 7 times in the past. So what's a time? I'm going to tell you. It's 360 years. 360 years, like the degrees of a perfect circle. 360 days is a prophetic year. But many times in the Old Testament, all kinds of prophecies are unfolded in a graduated way in prophetic years of 360, or 3 days, or 360 years. Well, 7 times 360 is 2,520 years. 2,520 is 360 times 7. Where do we see this number again? Well, I'm going to tell you. Nebuchadnezzar basically crapped on himself, or Belshazzar crapped on himself when he was having a banquet. And when he was having a banquet, in the middle of the banquet, as they're drinking an orgy, whatever they were having, a disembodied hand appeared in the air with a finger that wrote mean, tekel, a parson on the wall. And Nebuchadnezzar, or Belshazzar, I think it's the same one, Belshazzar was horrified. And Daniel the prophet was called in to interpret it. And when he looked at it, he saw these are units of measurement. Mean, tekel, a parson do have literary meanings. And it said weighed, numbered, divided. But the geometrical value of mean, tekel, a parson was 1,220. It's very interesting. So what happened? What happened when the Commonwealth came together? I mean, when the Commonwealth was ripped apart, and this prophecy began of this great division of Israel, and they're walking in blindness, and all these things are discussed in the Old Testament as concerning prophetic Manasseh and Ephraim, the spiritual descendants of Israelites who would forget who they are until the last days. But they were prophesied to come back together and be the hammer of God, the weapon of his warfare. When did this happen? Well, I'm going to tell you. When the king of the north came down and took the 10 tribes, which later became 10 Commonwealth nations, which later took over Rome, which later became 10 great powers of basically Europoid peoples, which later became 10 of the 13 colonies of the United States of America. 745 BC, the Assyrians invaded northern Israel, and they took into captivity the 10 tribes of the Commonwealth. This is known in the historical record as 745. It's never been contested. Every historian knows 745 BC was the date when this event occurred. It's very easy to see. Biblical chronologist Stephen Jones has it at 745, and so do so many other people. But in 745 BC, they were taken because of their military prowess and intelligence. The Assyrians wanted the equestrian abilities of the Israelites. And this is why the Assyrian horse lists are absolutely packed full of Israelite names. Because they didn't enslave these people. They actually repopulated a whole area with them, gave them lands all on the frontiers of Europe and Asia, and used them to train other peoples on how to be the master of the horse. Because the Israelites were awesome archers and spearmen from horseback. So I believe it was E. Raymond Capt who has a whole book about the Assyrian horse lists, showing all the Israelite names. And he has another book called Missing Links in Assyrian Tablets, and it's all about the Israelites and showing historical proof that these people were relocated to Assyria and who they became later. These are the clay peoples that are described in Daniel's prophecy. But in Daniel's prophecy, the part that that JT follows JC and others that promote this theory are not talking about is they're demonizing the United States of America, a communist doctrine, saying it started in 1776. This is when Satan's empire began. And they use for their evidence that the Statue of Liberty looks like Lucifer. How interesting. Statue of Liberty didn't even come around for 110 years after the Republic was founded in 1776. And we know that that's the statue of Apollo. Anybody who has followed the Archaix research knows this. Apollo, you can call Apollo Lucifer, it doesn't matter. But this only shows the denigration of a system, not its inception. The United States did not begin evil. It only became evil, like all institutions do, because this is negative default programming. But I digress. What I want to show you is that 745 BC was 7 prophetic times of 360 years, exactly 2,520 years. Mean, tekel, apartian, weighed, numbered, divided. 2,520 years after Israel was, the 10 tribes of Israel were deported by Assyria, God brings them back together in 1776 AD. It is the 2,520th year. There are many timelines that go across millennia that are found that start in passages in the Old Testament. And they're absolute proof that no centuries, nothing's been changed. There is missing history because of redactionism, but there aren't missing years. Calendrical isometric projections, none of these things, if the Archaix chronology was off 1 year, none of them would work. None of them would work. Like I said, we're not done with this video. I got some amazing things to show you. We have another thing concerning the year 2070. 2070 hadn't even come up yet. We hadn't even got to 2070 yet. But we'll get there in a minute because I'm going to see, what is this? What is this right here? This is year 2070. We'll talk about 2070 here in just a second. But yeah, 1776 AD is 2,520 years. Mean, tekel, apartian. Weighed, numbered, divided. The Israelites were taken into bondage, spread throughout the entire world, and in the last days brought back together in 1776 AD. It is the exact opposite of what JT follows JC and this poisonous doctrine called Satan's little season is promoting. It's the exact opposite. Satan's kingdom, the Satan little season didn't begin in 1776. One of the most spiritual governments in the world, the only constitution in the world at the time that said the rights of men come from God, not from other governments, not from kings and monarchies. And it was the church that labeled the United States as being demonic. The Vatican labeled it as demonic simply because the Constitution preserves spiritual values. So, anyway, if 1776 was the beginning of Satan's little season, I need to know how you explain this book right here from the year 1662. Because in this book from 1662, it is absolutely packed. I've shown this on YouTube before. I'm going to show you the date right now. This book from 1662 is absolutely packed with commentary concerning biblical prophecy, saying they're still waiting on the return of Christ in 1662. This is before 1776. There's no millennial reign because according to the commentaries in here, the world's a terrible place. They're still waiting on Jesus to come back in 1662. Yeah, this is a 400-something-year-old book. It's right here. It's a very old book in my library. Let me see if I can't get... Y'all can see it. The date's at the bottom. It's 1662. Oh, 1664. Yeah, guys. This book is old and it is packed. But according to this book, none of the prophecies have even been fulfilled yet. At all. At all. And this is 100 in 114 years or 104 years before the United States is even declares its independence. 1664, right here. How do you explain that? If all history's been rewritten and redacted, did they forget to burn that book? Did they forget to burn all the books that I have up here from the 16 and 1700s? I've shared them on my channel too. Nothing in here about a 1,000-year millennial reign. Nothing in here about Jesus has already been here. Everything according to these books in the 16 and 1700s is all still implied that everybody's waiting on Jesus to return. All right. So, yeah, it's just not. You have to take too many unknowns to adopt a theory like this. Yeah, you have to take way too many unknowns. So also, I'm gonna something that crossed my mind. So if the book of Revelation is dealing in months, days, and years, and then it throws the word season. Satan is released for a little season. Well, that's a very short period of time because it subdivides a year by 4, a season. So we're talking about a 90-day period. And if you want to use the rule in eschatology that makes days and years interchangeable, such as the Shar system, which I have shown many times, because in the Old Testament, there are many times when a prophet is told, like, hey, lay on your side for 40 days. And the prophet lays on his side and he stays there for 40 days. And when he gets up, God explains to him, hey, man, you were made to lay on your side for 40 days to pay for the 40 years of Israel's sin. So the day for a year, even using the day for a year model, this theory still falls apart because the season wouldn't be 90 days, it would be 90 years. So 1776 plus 90 years would have been somewhere in the 1800s when Satan was locked back up and then Jesus took back over and the resurrection would have happened. And what are we doing? It's 2025. There's something critically wrong with this theory. Let's see. $37 years. All those prophecies had to be fulfilled in 37 years. No, Jason, they added centuries. Yeah, it's just flamenco repackaged. That's all it is, guys. Let's see. So there are many things. Like I just showed you the 25-20 year prophetic timeline from Israel's disbandment to Israel comes back together. How interesting. How very interesting that 1776 is exactly 13 centuries after 476 AD when the 10 clay toes mixed with iron conquer the Roman Empire. And these are the 10 European Commonwealth nations under Odovacar the German. They finally conquer the Roman Empire in 476 AD, the 10 toes, which are descended from the 10 tribes. But it's 13 centuries later is the year 1776. And it was 13 colonies on the other side of the world in North America that started this rebellion, this revolt. And it's only that side of the world where the number 13 was holy, because the ancient Olmecs and the Maya and the Toltecs regarded the number 13 as a divine number. There were 13 heavens, there were 13 hells. We were stuck in between them, and all their calendars were predicated off the number 13. This is where we get the Mayan long count, started in 3113 BC, and it counts 1,872,000 days until the end of the Mayan long count, which is 13 Bactans. Each Bactan is 144,000 days. When you properly assess the calendar, it ends in 2046 AD. I've showed this many times. I got videos and published books about this. But the Mayan long count knew that the 13.0.0.0.0 was the end of the calendar. And it's when the 13 heavens would collapse and the 13 hells would open up. And it's in our calendar year, 2046 AD. So strange that the book of Revelation talks about this in the second and third trumpet judgment. So strange that the book of Revelation calls the world Sodom and Egypt. So strange. In Egypt, there we have the Great Pyramid. What did David Davidson, engineer in 1926, write in this book right here? In this book right here, engineer David Davidson, 1926, specifically published it. He doesn't know why, but there's a three-dimensional geometrical timeline encoded in the Great Pyramid's rectilinear dimensions, and it concerns an absolute total destruction of the northern hemisphere in the year 2045, or the end of a calendar in 2045 for the destruction to happen in 2046. It's all here. So strange that the 13 colonies of America would be in North America, the ancient homeland of the Maya, the 13 clans of the Maya. So strange. So what's even further strange is that there is a prophecy in Hosea. You know what? Let's look it up. If any of you have got your Bibles out, there's a prophecy in Hosea, in Hosea. And that prophecy is in chapter 6, verse 1 through 2. And it concerns the three turnings of Israel. And many biblical eschatologists agree that the three turnings of Israel concern three 1,000-year periods. And this is really fascinating, because in the prophecy of Hosea, chapter 6, verse 1 through 2, the division between Israel and Judah happened in the civil war of 931 BC. In 931 BC began what's known as the two kingdoms, the 10 tribes of the north and the 2.5 tribes of the south. This was the two kingdoms of Israel and Judah. 931, the one people became two. They separated. They were no longer going to be a part of the same dynasty. And the Amrides, which were the Qumri, the people of the north, the 10 tribes, separated themselves from the Judean kings. And and after that, there was a series of 4 wars between Israel and Judah. Most people don't even know this. Biblical commentators even try to gloss over it, but there are references to all 4 wars between the Israelites and the Jews in the Bible. So in the Old Testament, 931 was the last civil war, and they became two peoples. That started a countdown of 3,000 years. How interesting. Here's another long countdown that crosses over all these timelines. Let's see if this is anything important. Nope. All right, cool. So Hosea chapter 6, 1 through 2, three 1,000-year periods, 3 turnings. If we count 1,000 years from 931 BC, we get exactly 70 AD. 70 AD is when the Jews lost their homeland, they lost their city, Jerusalem, they lost everything. According to this theory, it's when Jesus returned, but not according to the prophet Hosea. This is the first turning, according to the prophet. The second turning was 1,000 years later. That's the second turning. This is AD 1070. 1,000 years after AD 70 is 1070. What happened after 1070? It is widely known by historians. The world came out of the Dark Ages. Universities were being built. Cathedrals were being built. Star forts were being built. It's like the war. You got to understand, the world was at almost 1 to 2% population. Almost the entire world died in the 6th century AD when the Justinian darkness period. Now it took 400 and something years of population and ignorance, and people are educating themselves over, and we have archaeological excavations of the plague periods when whole catacombs were full of dead bodies, because during the plague they just threw the bodies in the cisterns, and underground and in different buildings were full of plague. I mean, sometimes it was standing room only. They just stood them up, and then they bricked up those buildings, and then they kept building their city over it. And 2, 3, 400 years later, it's a sub-level of an original city. It's packed full of plague victims. So we have all these catacombs. We have all kinds of history that unfolded. But in 1070, the world woke up and the Normans are at supreme. Now we have the Crusades. We have all kinds, the whole world's waking up in 1070. It's the second turning. But exactly 1,000 years after that is the year 2070. Archaix veterans know 2070 is divisible by what? 138. 2070 is when, according to the prophetic model, that Israel and all the spiritual sons of adoptions and all the holy that are pulled out of Judah, all of them come back together and become one family again. Many of you have asked me over and over in other videos where it wasn't relevant, Jason, you got 2070 in Chronicon, and if I look up, this is Chronicon right here. If you look up in Chronicon 27, it's talking about all the saints are being brought together. That's exactly what the book of Revelation is describing. There's a period when the saints, the people that are murdered and killed in the tribulation period, they are sequestered and set aside. Then in 2070, they are all brought together and taken somewhere. Because when the battle of Armageddon comes, they return with Christ as the saints in a mode of war. In 2070, they're taken away from the construct and given their inheritances. What does the book of Revelation say the inheritances are? I will make you a pillar in the temple of my God. I will give you a white stone with a new name. I will give you a new garment. And what does the Christian mysteries say? When we look at the Christian mysteries, as I've shown you in my book, Lost Scriptures of Giza, the garment is the key. It is your name. It is ancient. It's always belonged to you, but you couldn't wear it while you were in the construct. It's given back to you once you exit the construct, but because of everything you've gone through in the construct, it now has more added to it. It's your real avatar, which interfaces with your real immortal spirit. But that's subject matter of other videos. Here we have three turnings. We have three turnings until Israel is healed. 3 turnings, and the healing happens in the year 2070. While all the people who have rejected everything divine from the oversoul, they're on the outside of 2070, going through the Great Tribulation period. So anyway, that's the 3 turnings of Hosea. And there's so many of them. You've seen this right here. I have to share this with you too. You've seen this. Wow, you know what? I'm not going to show you that until I show you something else first. Let's see. Let's see here. I'm going to share my screen. I got to talk out loud for this stuff. Okay, you've seen this. So here's 522 in the center. You see 522 right there? That's 522 right there in the center. These are the 5. This is the calendar that the Roman Catholic Church basically admitted that they were trying to hide. They're trying to hide this 552-year period in these greater cycles. Everything here is divisible by 138, both 552 and 1656. This is what they're trying to hide. There's nothing here. There's no room anywhere in this chronology. There's 2178, the reset year. There is no room anywhere in this mathematical construct for a Satan's little season theory. It just doesn't fit. It completely violates thousands of data points. So they have a whole lot. They have a whole lot to unpack before they can package that theory for anybody of intelligence to accept. It's just crazy. So again, I got to show you this before we go into the next section. Here's the Archaix chronology. There's 522 again. And you see Phoenix in red and you see Nemesis X in black. Both of them 522. Here it is. All these calendars that go all the way into the future. It's amazing. But what I want to draw your attention to is the fact that the Archaix chronology begins with the world's oldest known calendrical system, which is the Anunnaki-Ner system of 600-year periods. It's 216,000 days. The Shar system is the origin of the Vedic calendar being divisible, all the yugas being divisible by 216,000. It is why the Mayan long count system is also divisible by 144. We have 144 is the base denominator in 216,000. So all these systems, the Ner being 600 years, the Mayan long count being a day count system, the Yugas being totally commensurate with it, and the Shar system, 432,000 turnings of the stars from when Enki and the Anuna appeared in the old world to the flood. It's right here. It's so simple. It's 3439 BC. It's 3439 BC, 600 years plus 600 years to the Great Flood of Noah, 2239 BC. All these were day count systems. They're all every single one of them makes sense of the entire historical record. And this new theory would completely have to unpack all these data points. It would have to completely overturn all this research to even be true. But the Archaix chronology begins in 5239 BC with the oldest calendar. 5239 BC to the end of the calendar, the 6,000th year of the Anomundi calendar, is 2106 AD. It's a return of the same digits of 216,000 of the Ner. It's 216. 216,000 days is a 600-year period of 360 days each. This is the world's oldest calendar. And then the modern version is 2106 AD. It's again 216. But 2106 AD is the year 6,000 since the Adam and Eve reset cataclysm right here in 3895 BC. 3895 BC plus 6,000 years goes all the way to 2106. Why is this important? Because 7,344 years is the distance in time between 5239 BC and 2106. This is exactly 7,344 years. 7,344 years is 3 periods of 2448 years. It is the number of Exodus. The reason this is so important, this whole timeline is 2448 years plus 2448 years plus 2448 years, which is the apophthegm of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. The apophthegm is the sloping distance from the base to the top. 612 feet is the measurement. 612 feet is 7,344 inches, or 2448 plus 2448 plus 2448. It was from Egypt, the land of Goshen, where the Great Pyramid is, that the Israelites made their exodus from a world that was suffering a cataclysm, and they made their escape. So why is 2448 so important in all this, in the geodetics, in the chronology, and in the chronometry of the Great Pyramid? Well, let's look at the true chronology of the world. Let me show you what we have right here. I'm going to share my screen. So, this series of facts completely dismantles the Satan's little season theory. I welcome any of these guys that are promoting this BS narrative to put their own presentations and take apart the Archaix model. Just do it. You think you can do it? You think you can promote this BS and undo all these facts that are in Archaix on the chronology of the world? Then do it. By all means, do it. I'll post your video on my channel, and then I'll give answer. But here's the book, Flying Serpents and Dragons. As a matter of fact, here's the book right here, Flying Serpents and Dragons. This is it. I want you to see this book, Flying Serpents and Dragons. This book is in micro print, and it is massive. Huge book. But what's special about it? In this book, Flying Serpents and Dragons, we learn of a former historian employed formerly with the National Space Agency, the NSA. He was employed as a cryptologist and a reporter on intelligence activities named Rene Andrew Boulay. He's also an antiquarian and a chronologist, and he wrote, "Scholars agree that the key to establishing the time of events in biblical times hinges on fixing the time of the Exodus." His own calculations place the Exodus at 1447 BC. Where have you heard that before? Well, I'm going to show you. It's right here in Chronicon. If you ever wanted to read some fascinating material, I'm always telling people, look, man, Chronicon, I lowered the price of Chronicon from $80 to $40. And I also added 400 chronological world charts that help you understand it better. My mods can put the link in the description box. My other videos have the link. Can put the link in the live chat. But here's Chronicon here. This is 1447 BC, and it is massive. Even in Chronicon, it's massive. Goes on for days. Yeah. 1447 BC, right here. I know you guys can't see the small part, but this is Chronicon. It's huge. It's 1,055 pages of chronological material, and Chronicon's like in 1447 BC is like 5 pages of ancient citations from all over the world that show that this cataclysm happened in the year 1447 BC. This former cryptologist is absolutely correct in this book. Emmanuel Velikovsky, right here in this book, Ages of Chaos, he said that 1447 is also the date of the 10 plagues and exodus of Egypt. Right here, Ages in Chaos. He wrote, before 1950, he wrote, "Computations have been made which indicate 1447 as the year of the Exodus." What? There's another good book called Mysterious Numbers of the Hebrew Kings. In this, Dr. Thiel in the book dates the Exodus at 1447 BC. You're going to see why this is important here in a little while. Another book, Outlines of Ancient History by Robbins, from the year 1833. The historian placed the death of Moses in 1447 BC. I found that pretty interesting. Here's the book right here. This is from 1833. It is very old, and he just made a mistake. He still associated it to Moses, but he made a mistake because Moses didn't die in 1447. But the fact that he mentioned that year 1447 and linked it to Moses is very interesting. But we can even remove that. I already know that there's critics that'll howl about that. So I'm not even worried about it. We can remove that. Biblical chronologist Stephen Jones, in his book, The Secrets of Time, places the date of the Exodus 1447 BC. A researcher who did not rely on other authors, who did not cite Emmanuel Velikovsky, he only cited scriptural passages in the Bible, the book of Jasher's Chronology, the book of Jubilees text, and he cites the Assyrian eponyms to get this date. Of great significance here is that Jones goes even further to show that the year 1447 BC is also the ancient Old World year 2448. We know this as Annus Mundi, also Anomundi. And this fact leads to another body of evidence. We now cite the rabbinical text, Seder Haderod. David Davidson in 1924, citing the Jewish Seder Haderach text in the Great Pyramid in this book. You'll find this information in this book, Engineer David Davidson. This version was published in 1926. But in 1924, when he came out with this book, he published that in Seder Haderach, it shows that the Exodus event was in the year 2448, Anno Mundi. So here we have the BC calendar going back to 1447, and then the old world calendar that started in 3895 BC, 1656 years before the flood, and counts this way in time, it's the year 2448. 2448. Isn't that something? As a matter of fact, I need to see something. Okay, I saw it. So 2448 is extremely interesting. We know the Great Flood by virtue of the Archaix research and many other researchers that the Great Flood happened in 2239 BC, which was the year 1656 Anomundi. If we add the 792 years of the Nemesis X object to 1656, the flood year of Noah, we get precisely 2448, the Exodus date of which in our calendar is 1447 BC. You can't make this shit up. I told you guys many times and in many presentations, if we're even 1 year off in the Archaix chronology, none of these parallels, and I've showed them to you in the thousands, would work. None of them just wouldn't work. In the book, Annals of the World, this is over 360 years ago, Archbishop, Annals of the World Chronology, there is a mystery that the church fathers and ancient historians have tried to cover up. Usher wrote that the year 2448 Annus Mundi, that Moses and Cecrops were contemporaries. But in the text, the only Exodus story preserved under this heading is that of Cecrops, leading his people out of Egypt to settle ancient Greece. What? Did Paul know about this when he wrote the letters to the churches, to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and every single letter that Paul wrote was addressed to a Greek city? Did he know this? That the most ancient Exodus account doesn't have Israelites going to Palestine? It has Israelites leaving Egypt by ship and settling Greece. What? That's right. Oh, what year did it happen? It happened in 2448 Anno Mundi. It's right here. All right. Though this is not the subject matter here, I have already documented in many other presentations numerous examples of Jewish borrowings from secular histories to put together their Old Testament narrative, a collection of true events that happened to all non-Jewish peoples, for which they rewrote and inserted themselves into historical narratives for which they didn't belong. So the next citation is a book called The Ancient History by M. Rollin. He is a famous historian. This book is from 1826. In this book, we find 2448 is the Anno Mundi date provided for the exodus of Cecrops from Egypt to found Athens in Attica. Here's another historical citation. Doesn't say anything about Israelites leaving Egypt going to Palestine. It is Israelites leaving with Cecrops. Cecrops is considered to be a Phoenician. Cecrops leaving Egypt to go settle ancient Greece. Here is Annals of the World. I forgot to show this a minute ago. It's a gigantic book written 360 years ago. This is where we find Cecrops 2448 Exodus from Egypt. This is the next book that I cited earlier. 1826 M. Rollin, right here. This is 1826 M. Rollin. I can't really show it. It's an old book, so I'm just going to show you the PDFs real quick. I want you to see these guys. Here's where outlines of ancient history on a new plan embracing biographical notices of the illustrious persons and general views. Here it is right here. This is Robbins from the year 1833. It's right there at the bottom. 1833. This is Robbins. He's the one that made the mistake and said Moses died in 1447 BC. So he was using chronographical material that was pretty much on point, but he just misspoke. Moses didn't die in 1447 BC. In 1447 BC, Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt. But if you're making up a story that never really happened, then you're going to get some details wrong. But they got the date right. And then next, the book I can't show you right now because it's too old, falling apart, is right here. It's 1826. There it is at the bottom. This is in my library, 1826. So, the ancient history of the Egyptians, Carthaginians, Assyrians, Babylonians, Medes, and Persians, Grecians, and Macedonians by Rollin. Rollin is one of the most undisputed historians in scholastic history. His books are massive. I think I have them all. They're huge. And he just goes through history like none other. It's dry reading, but if you like history like I do, you'll read it. But it's 1826. And in this book, at the end of all his books, he has chronologies that shows you because you have to understand, prior to 300 years ago, all these historical books, a bunch of them, not all of them, but a bunch of them, they show the original Anomundi dating. That system has been purged from publishing because they don't want you to know what year it is. Today, we're in the year 5919. I'm going to prove it to you before the end of this video. You are in the year 5919. And this date of 2448 proves that because it's 1447 BC. I'm going to show you. Here it is. Cecrops. Cecrops conducts a colony from Egypt and founds the kingdom of Athens in Attica. What? Is that the year 2448? AM? AM. Anomundi. Sure was. So, many of you like to use a calculator and go forward and backward and try to follow me in my research, and you're always 1 year off. And the reason you're 1 year off is because you're not taking into consideration that the AD BC confluence, it looks like this. This is exactly 4 BC is 3891 Anomundi. 3 BC is 3892 Anomundi. 2 BC is 3893 Anomundi. 1 BC is 3894 Anomundi. There's no such year as zero. There's no zero. BC 1 goes straight to AD 1. They're connected just like that. And then 2 AD is 3896. 3 AD is 3897. If you do all your calculations like I do, using only the Anomundi system going forward and backward, you'll never make the mistake. You make the mistake when you try to add AD dates like 1776 to 745 BC. 745 BC, it's really simple to figure out what 745 BC is. Let me show you. I'll take my calculator. 745 BC minus 2239, which is the Great Flood, which we know of is Anomundi 1656. So it's really easy. The difference is 1494 years. So all I do is add 1494 years plus 1656, which is 2239 BC, and I get the year 3150. If you look in Chronicon, you will find out that 3150 Anomundi is precisely 745 BC. Then you take 3150 Anomundi and you add 2520. Mean, Tikal Apartian, 1,520. You add that, 2,520 years, and you get 5670 Anomundi. If you want to know what 5670 Anomundi is, it's real simple. 5670 Anomundi minus 6,000, because we know the year 6,000 is 2106. It's 330 years exactly. So 2106 minus 330 is precisely 1776 AD. It's so easy if you only factor Anomundi, because if you try to add BC to AD dates, you'll always be 1 year off. Anyway, that's just a little, that's from Archaix veterans, because they're the ones that like to do that. Look at that, 1 AD, 1 AD. Roman emperor orders the destruction of over 2,000 volumes of the Greek prophecies. Yeah. All right, so we're done with that. I'm done sharing all that. Let me get back. I lost my place on the. Okay. I got to make sure I have my phone on so I can see what you guys are seeing. Cool, you're seeing the same thing. So that's 2448 is the ancient world's calendar year, Anno Mundi, for the Exodus and the cataclysm that happened 792 years after the Great Flood. It happened in Egypt. So the next book is the Orion Prophecy. And in the Orion Prophecy, these two authors, Gino Radtins and Patrick Gerald, these two authors, they had no idea when the Exodus occurred. They don't even talk about the Exodus. And the biblical story is not even the topic of these authors, but Patrick and Gino in this amazing book, The Orion Prophecy, independently discovered from Egyptian texts that in Egypt, the number 2448 was the number for cataclysm. You can't make this shit up. What was the Great Pyramid made for? What are all the traditions attached to the Great Pyramid in the Egyptian Coptic text, and in the Book of Jasher, and in the books, and what is it? In the traditions of Surid, what was the Great Pyramid designed for? It was designed to survive a cataclysm. Cataclysm is the number 2448. But 2448 plus 2448 plus 2448 is the whole world's timeline, 7,344 years. But 7,344 inches is 612 feet. And the apophthegm of the Great Pyramid from base to top is exactly 612 feet. The number 2448 times 3. These data points are all collected from the conclusions, records, and meticulous chronological research of these authors, because 1447 BC is 2448 Annus Mundi. It is a simple deduction to find that year 1 of this ancient calendar is 3895 BC. As I've shown on my channel, if you look at the rectilinear dimensions of the Great Pyramid, there's one measurement from the back of the King's Chamber going across the entire great slab floor to the great step down the full length of the Grand Gallery. It's exactly 3895 inches. I've shown many of these chronometrical associations with the Great Pyramid's rectilinear measurements and the years of world history. We live in a construct, and the builder of the Great Pyramid knew this. In fact, they knew the future before it happened. As I've demonstrated in many posts and videos, 3895 BC was the Genesis 1 reset, when humans were told to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth because the race had been almost wiped out. Genesis, the beginning of the Bible, isn't about the beginning. It's not the creation. It is the survivors of a total reset, seeing a new heavens and new earth, because the old ones were just totally destroyed and mankind was left naked. They had nothing left. So this begins the famous 1,656 years before the flood. I didn't make that up. There are many, many authors that talk about this period of time. Usher, Rashi, Talmudic text, the Genesis genealogy of the 10 patriarchs, all added together in Genesis equals 1656. Can't make early church fathers, later historians, biblical chronologists, Stephen Jones, and a host of other authors all confirm the period of the world was 1656 years before it was destroyed in Noah's flood. From the Adam and Eve reset to the destruction of the destructive flood of Noah is 1656 years, which is a period that is perfectly divisible by the Phoenix phenomenon number of 138. It's also the number that the church wanted to hide from you, which is the Phoenix cycle of 552 times 3. That's 1656. The Anno Domini calendar was created to hide the Phoenix cycle. Because 3895 BC was a total destruction and reset, this same 1656 years is a period that Rashi says is the period between two world destructions. So we can confirm that 2239 BC is the year 1656, Anomundi. It's just simple as that. Which leads us to these 4 books by Flavius Josephus. JT follows JC, wants to cite Josephus when it supports his weird theory. But all the references in Josephus that he has to ignore are immense. But instead of going through those, I think I'm going to show you something else Josephus said. Over 19 centuries ago, in Antiquity of the Jews, right here, these old books are from 1871. These are my 1871 copies of the complete works of Josephus. In Antiquities of the Jews, in Book 1, Section 6, Josephus says that Abram was born in the 292nd year after the deluge. In these books, Abraham was born 292 years after the flood. Well, we easily got the flood date. We have overwhelming data that the flood was 2239 BC, which is also the year 1656 Anomundi. That means if Abram was born 292 years after the flood, Josephus was telling the truth. How do we know Josephus was telling the truth? Because that's the year 1947 BC. In the Talmud Sanhedrin text, Rashi dated the birth of Abraham to be in our calendar 1947 BC. This is the Talmudic Sanhedrin, 97a, Rashi, Leviticus Rabbi 29, section 1. Rashi was alive and writing about 900 years ago, and this 1947 BC date is 292 years after the 2239 BC Great Flood. But he's not alone, and you'll see the importance here in a minute. In Secrets of Time, biblical chronologist Stephen Jones wrote let's see. We already know we use the Assyrian eponyms, the Old Testament, Book of Jasher, Book of Jubilees. And he said that Abram was born in 1947 BC, which is really interesting because 1947 BC overlaps a little bit with 1948 Anomundi. It overlaps by 2 months. I've talked about this many times. So 1947 BC, when Abram was born, is also 1947 and 48 Anomundi. 2 different calendars, one moving forward in time and one going backward in time, that was created thousands of years earlier, actually synchronized at the birth of Abram, 292 years after the flood. His birth actually is the center of a space-time palindrome. Could there be any years missing? Because if we take that same 1947-48 and we go forward Anno Domini, if the year 1 AD and Anno Domini in the time between them, and we go backwards 1947.5 years, we get Abram's birth. But if we go 1947.5 years back even further, we're at year 1, 3895 BC, Adam and Eve reset. Strangely, if we go the other way into the future, 1948 Anomundi, at 1948 AD, we have the establishment of Israel in Palestine, the Jewish state. So that's just interesting. It's neither here nor there. But these cross-calendrical parallels and these isometric projections, it would never work if 1 year was missing. Book of Jasher. Commentator on the Book of Jasher, chronologist M.M. Noah, in the year 1839. Here's the book. Got the book right here. Got the book right here for you. See if you can see it. This is the 1839 right here. Book of Jasher. You can see all that Hebrew at the top. I know you see it. This is an amazing chronological record. Book of Jasher. But M.M. Noah in 1839 wrote that Abram was born in 1948 Anomundi, or the year 1947 BC. Just can't make this stuff up. Seder Olam, another rabbinical text. 2,000 years ago, in the calculations of the text Seder Olam, we find that in our calendar today, Abram of Genesis was born in the Hebrew year 1948. Hebrew reckoning, or the year 1947 BC. And this is confirmed by another rabbi, Moses Maimonides, centuries ago, who wrote Abram was born in 1947 BC of our calendar. Another Hebrew scholar wrote a book called Sequence of Events in the Old Testament. Eliezer Schulman, in Sequence of Events of the Old Testament, dates Abram's birth at 1948 BC. And one final data point strengthens this perfect structuring of the ancient world's chronology is the fact that Seder Olam has the 10 plagues and Exodus event from Egypt to be 500 years after the birth of Abram. By other sources, we established that Abraham was born in 1947 BC and that the Exodus was 1447 BC, and the difference between them is exactly 500 years. Putting together these chronological facts, we have 3895 BC, year 1 Annus Mundi. 2239 BC is the Great Flood, 1656 Anno Mundi. 1947 BC is 1948 Anno Mundi with a 2-month overlap, making them the same year. 1447 BC is 2448 Anno Mundi. The number of cataclysm in Egypt. In 2448 is what I showed you here. The entire chronology of the world from year 1 of the Nero reckoning of 600-year periods called the Great Year. I have whole videos on this calendar. Started in 5239 BC. Counting 7,344 years to 2106 AD, which is the 6,000th year since the Adam and Eve reset, when a whole world, or a civilization of 930 years was wiped off the map. And Adam and Eve were the survivors. They weren't the first man and woman. Here it is. This is 2448 years plus 2448 years plus 2448 years of history. And it's connected to the Great Pyramid's apophthegm of 7,344 inches, which is 612 feet. The Great Pyramid being something that is preserving something else from a cataclysm. And the core message of the mathematics of the Great Pyramid is Exodus. And the Exodus of world history that is so renowned, all these chronologists claim, was in the year 2448 Anno Mundi. Every bit of it is synchronistic. Every bit of it fits together perfectly. And there's no room for a ridiculous chronological amendment called Satan's little season. It doesn't fit. It doesn't work. With 3895 BC being year 1, then this year of 2025 is precisely 5919 Anno Mundi. This is the year you're in right now. 5919 Anno Mundi. This means there's 82 years until the end of the calendar, or the 6,000th year. But remember, in the apocalypse, a third is removed starting in 2046. Well, that's 20 years. There's only 60 years left by 2046. So it's 20 years is removed. And because this 20 years is removed in the book of Revelation, we find out the dragon becomes wroth because he realizes his time has grown short. Yeah. Also, there is a passage in prophecy that says that in the last days I forgot how it's worded. I cited it a few times where it talks about and if those days weren't shortened, then no flesh would be saved. But God is going to shorten those days to make sure, because it's an act of mercy. And we know what the shortening is. The 24-hour day becomes 16-hour days, and the 365-day year becomes 243 days. It's very clear in the second and third trumpet of the book of Revelation, which didn't happen way back then around AD 70. It hasn't happened yet. Why? How do we know it hasn't happened? Because we still have a 365-day year. We still have a 24-hour day, which makes sense of all the old calendrical systems in the world that provide us all the data that we put together to understand that we're in the year 5919. Anomundi right now. Remember, people new to my channel, the year is not the world is not 6,000 years old, but there is a calendar that we're on that started 5,919 years ago. All right, so let's see. Let me get rid of that. I'm done with that. Let me get back to my original document. I think I'm done with that. So back to little season. I know some of my monologues go on, so I'm really surprised. We got 1,654 people still in the chat. We were up to 1,800, I think. So you got Jaydreamerz, JT, whatever his name is. They need to go back to the drawing board. They need to figure this stuff out, man. At least pull a calculator out, because that shit ain't gonna fly. It is not gonna fly. Also, you need to see this. So I'm done with that document. Get that out of there. So let me go into my desktop. I need to show you something else. I need to show you. Yeah, this is. Let me get out of there and show you something. Go to my black and whites. Black and whites are so much better. If I can find them. There we go. All right. This one's good enough. I'm going to share my screen again. Oh yeah, well, we're wrapping it up, guys. We still got another 20 minutes, but I got major shit to drop right here. So, a lot of chronological synchronicities, all kinds of stuff. Hold on, that is not what I was looking for at all. What is this? Yeah, this is good. It's all different, amazing chronological. So, we even have the year 2070 on here. 1902, final 144 sealed. He came to set the captives free. 1902. That's right. The Great Pyramid Step. All this is relative, but I've got so many videos on this already. Yeah, there's 24. Yeah, it's 2448 months. 1902 is 2448 months to the year 2106. Just like 2106 is 2440. There it is right there. 2448 years, 2448 years, 2448 years to 5239. This is not the chart I wanted to show you guys, but it ended up being an awesome one anyway. Yeah, we need to go. Well, I need to show you the chart I wanted to show you. I can't find it, so I'm going to show you this original one again. I'm going to show you this because this is the official Archaix world chronology chart. The reason I need to draw attention to this is because every single one of these red dots up here, this is Phoenix phenomenon dates. These are all these are all on a timeline, each one of them 138 years before the one before it, or 276 years. This is all on, it's like the heartbeat of the world. This is the Phoenix phenomenon. What makes it so interesting is we can shelve all the chronological data I just showed you. All these citations from all these authors that never knew anything about the 138 year structuring of the construct and how this Phoenix phenomenon happens all the time. We can shelve all that. We can shelve all those books I just showed you. The Phoenix dates themselves still support the exact same timeline. Yeah, here it is. 3895 BC, right there, is on the 138-year timeline. And it's also one of the years that I just showed you that from the pyramid timeline and the world history timeline, what all these different scholars are saying about the year of the Exodus. Here it is. What's the next one? It's right here. 2239 BC, the Great Flood. 1656 years later, which is 1656 is divisible by 138. There it is. Those 2 years in world history and all these other ones are all divisible by 138. Whoa, wait a minute. Here's 522 AD. Again, divisible by 130. It's on the 138-year timeline. Going all the way over here to 1902, which is 2448 months before the end, and starts the Great Pyramid step timeline, and then 2040, 138 years later. What I don't have on here is 2178, the immortal looping number, which is 138 years after 2040. So the Phoenix chronology is entirely independent of the biblical chronology, and yet they're both the same. Go figure that one out. And many of you know that when it comes to this theory, I have to say this. Guys, because I would be dishonest if I'm not. I went through this theory and I showed you the inadequacies. I showed you what doesn't work. I even pulled from prophecies showing these are prophecies they're ignoring because they don't fit within their narrative. It showed you this doesn't work. This Satan's little season. I may do another video. It depends on how they respond. I'll do another video and go even deeper. But I've satisfied every element to my satisfaction that there's nothing to it. So I'm done with it. It's stupid. It's just dumb. But if they come back with a good retort and all that, believe me, I'll fire off again. But the truth of the matter is the entire story of Jesus began as a fantastic spiritual literary document. Every single book you see here is a book in my library. These are books I've studied. These are some books I'm still studying. Many of these books I read when I was in prison. The entire gospel story was literary. It took over 500 years for the church to turn it into something of a historical narrative. The very fact that all 100% of all the Christian and gospel narratives were composed and entered the historical record after the second destruction of Jerusalem in AD 134. The Bar Kokhba rebellion is completely condemning to the Satan's little season theory, because they're using documents that were published over a century and a half later to prove a theory that completely does away with all the archaeological. You understand there's 21 different authors that we have their books today who wrote in the first century, never wrote of these things. And there's no way that all these prophecies can be compressed in 37. All these events did not happen in 37 years. It's ludicrous, guys. But when we study Christianity, we realize it was literary. It was never historical. And that fact alone, just the hundreds, maybe even thousands of data points I have shown about Christianity proves that Satan's little season is just that. It's just seasonal. It's the new seasonal BS theory that's going around because people just need shit to talk about. But it's crap. It's total crap theory, guys. But we can separate that and just use their arguments. But when it comes to me personally, I'm just going to let you know the whole story of Jesus is a fiction. This is why Wes Huff won't debate me about it. He's an apologist, and he doesn't even know his material. But there's nothing from the first century that shows Christianity. And when you look at the 2nd century stuff, you look at all the interpolations, redacted materials, and everything that's not there. Hell, we even have Irenaeus of Gaul, the very first apostolic father. Irenaeus of Gaul is arguing with everybody else, talking, man, Jesus lived till he was in his 50s. Yeah. Said he wasn't even crucified at age 33. He's lived into his 50s. It's crazy, guys, when you break all this shit down. But this video isn't about an exegetical analysis of Christianity. It's not. It's about this dumb theory. And this is how I handled it. And if there's anybody out there in the field that doesn't like it, produce your own video to refute this. Just do it. I'm more than welcome that. But until then, I got me another beer waiting. I had to tone it down this morning because I didn't want to come into this with too many beers. But I got my roll out. I shared what I wanted to share, guys, and my presentation is over. Please send Jaydreamerz the link. And the links are in the description box if you want to check out Mia and Brian's channels. They have 2 different channels. Amazing stuff on EMPCO, on the electromagnetic plasma discharge, destruction, cataclysm, whatever. It's pretty interesting. Also, there's a link in the description box for the video that was taken down from YouTube because Jaydreamerz didn't like the fact that somebody was exposing him, and I cited it. But you can watch it for free on Archaix TV. The link's in the description box. Until then, guys, I'll see y'all in Houston. But before that, we got Joel Perceiver coming on the channel. Flat Earth Dave's coming on the channel. I might invite, I'm supposed to do a video with Martin. I need to go on Martin's channel. I got all kinds of things going on. And more and more people hitting up the podcast link with Big John. There's just no telling who's going to be on this channel. No telling. I know it ain't going to be Jason Tice. Oh, man. Jason, you need to stop. Anyway, love you guys.